Ranking. It defines a person's status and awakens their desires, power, intelligence, connections, money, and work. In this world, everything has a ranking, and it's in this world that a boy's journey begins. In the village of Tori, a boy is chopping wood. As soon as he finishes, he breathes a sigh of relief. This is Lo, and he is 16 years old. Then someone shows up asking the boy to help them next time too. However, a furious girl appears and punches the person. She then points her finger and makes it clear that they need to stop asking Lova to do everything. This is Yuna. The man, still on the ground, tries to explain that Lova always looks idle, like he's not doing anything. But Yuna explains that Lova was just born with that spaced out look. She then walks over to the boy and, while shaking him back and forth, stresses that this is why others treat him like a doormat, because he always says yes. He replies that he doesn't really mind that, but Yuna makes it clear that's not the point, and says she knows he's kind. Then, out of nowhere, she gets excited and shouts that she just remembered something. She walks up to Lova and asks if he wants to leave the village with her, saying she found a hidden path that no one else knows about. At that moment, an old lady, Gaga, appears and says there's no way Yuna is doing that. While trying to hit the girl with her cane, she asks if Yuna has forgotten the village rules, since no one there is allowed to leave. Yuna asks her grandmother why they can't leave. She replies that she already said it's simply not allowed. Then she yells for someone to lock Yuna up for a while. Some people show up, grab the girl, and ask why she always has to be like this. After that, a man approaches the MC and asks if he can help fetch water. Lova simply says yes. As they hear Yuna shouting that she doesn't want to be locked up, the man comments to Lova that he and Yuna are the only ones the same age in the village, and despite that, they're completely different. He then tells Louis it's okay for him to rest sometimes, since he probably has desires too. Love then tells the man who asked for help that he won't be helping with the water. He explains that when his parents died and he was left alone, everyone in the village treated him like family. So he knows he was cared for so he wouldn't feel lonely, and he wants to repay that. Lois smiles and emphasizes that he really loves the village and everyone in it. The man starts crying with joy and asks if Love wants to come live in his house from now on, but Loa says no, then thanks him and mentions he still has the house his parents left behind. Still, what matters most to him are the villagers. The world outside doesn't mean much to him. A few hours later, Yuna is placed in a bamboo cage. She starts yelling, begging her grandmother to let her go. The old woman tells the girl that she should at least try to learn a little from Lo. Still troubled by why they can't leave the village, Yuna really wants to know the reason. The old woman answers that sometimes they even call merchants in, so what's the problem? Yuna says that's not it. She knows the world out there is much bigger, but she wants to know why the villagers are stuck there. The old woman becomes serious and says it's because everyone there has been rejected. Yuna is very confused and asks, rejected by who? Her grandmother says she doesn't need to know that now, because time will take care of everything. Meanwhile, the MC is drawing water from the well, but soon sighs in relief, thinking he finally finished filling the buckets. Then suddenly, someone throws a stone at Lo's head. He quickly turns around and sees it's Yuna. She tells him to be quiet. Then she signals for him to follow. As they walk, Love asks if she escaped again. Yuna laughs and says that after getting caught so many times, escaping has become a breeze. The MC says that's no reason to brag, but Yuna just tells him to shut up and follow her. After arriving at a place with a hidden passage, Lova makes it clear that if they leave again, Grandma will be furious. Yuna says that if it's just for a little while, it's fine, and that there's something she really wants to show him. Lo is quite surprised, wondering what it could be. As soon as the two leave the village, they begin walking through the forest. Yuna points ahead and says it's just over there, which leaves the MC wide-eyed, completely stunned by the beautiful view. Yuna starts jumping and tells Lova to take a good look because the world out there is huge. He can't believe what he's seeing, but quickly fills with joy and comments that it really is amazing. Yuna is very happy to see him like that. She then pulls out a book and asks if he knows the rules of the outside world. Loa is confused and asks her to be more clear. So the two sit down, and she explains that according to a book she secretly took from a merchant, the outside world has a system called ranking. Something like adventurers, deliverymen, doctors, musicians. There are rankings for everything, and those who make the list are called rankers. And apparently, even weapons, food, strength, and wealth, everything in the outside world is ranked, and everyone competes seriously. Lova takes the rulebook to have a look and, curious, asks if that means the outside world also has rules. Yuna says yes, but they're way cooler than the villages. She then gets excited and yells that she wants to be a ranked adventurer, traveling around, competing with rivals from all over the world, and one day becoming a respected and incredible adventurer. Lova just watches his excited friend, but reminds her that they still can't leave the village. Yuna shouts that she doesn't care because she's already decided to become an adventurer. She turns and calls for Lova to go with her, because they're going to live an adventure. He becomes thoughtful. Then she asks if he remembers when they were just 5 years old and were attacked by a giant bird, and that he saved her. She wants to know if he remembers that. Lova seems doubtful and asks if that really happened. Yuna insists it did, saying it was a huge creature that flew back and forth at high speed. So she makes it clear that she knew at that moment that even though he always seems out of it, when he tries for real, he's stronger than anyone. Lo is very surprised by what he hears. Yuna extends her hand and says he'll shine even more outside the village and that he should explore the world with her. His eyes sparkle, and he imagines the two of them leaving the village. But he takes a deep breath and thanks his friend, making it clear that he still loves the village too much to leave. Yuna gets furious, starts hitting him on the head, and yells, calling him hard-headed. She then turns and leaves, saying it's fine, she'll go alone, and that he can stay stuck in the village forever if he wants. Lova only asks her to be careful on the way back. The MC reflects on how Yuna left the village and realizes he had never really thought about that before. Staring at the vast view in front of him, he begins thinking about the rankings. As time passes, the day starts turning to evening. Still sitting, he looks around. He thinks it's best to head back now, so he stands up, but he notices something ahead, and seeing a floating island before him, he becomes very confused. The island starts getting closer. However, it begins emitting a strange energy around it, which grabs the MC's attention. Suddenly, a massive, powerful attack is fired. With the shock of the powerful blast, a tremendous noise erupts. The force of the impact reaches Lo, who has to brace himself to keep from being blown away. As he opens his eyes to see what happened, he is shocked to find that the enormous island has vanished. Then he remembers that the attack was aimed in the direction of his village, so he starts running, hoping everything is fine and that nothing happened. As he runs, he thinks about Yuna, Grandma, and the other villagers, until suddenly he stops, completely terrified, because he's looking at a massive crater where the village of Tori used to be. Lo tries to understand what the hell just happened. He climbs down into the crater and immediately starts shouting, wanting to know if anyone is there. The MC begins to remember when Yuna was a child and used to say that everything would be okay and that she'd always be by his side. He starts getting worried. He also remembers the villagers saying that he wouldn't be alone and that they would be his family. With that, he falls to his knees and screams. Then he starts crying, desperately wanting to understand why this happened. Suddenly, he hears someone say they were late again. A man approaches and comments that he could only watch everything unfold without being able to do anything. Lo looks up and sees the person in front of him, and the two lock eyes. The man quickly descends into the crater, and as soon as he reaches the MC, he asks if Lo was also from Tori Village. Lo replies yes. The man kneels and says he imagines how hard it must have been, but tells the boy not to worry because the island is already gone. Lo grabs the man's clothes and demands to know if he can explain what that thing was and what happened to the village and the people. Completely desperate, the MC is determined to know what it was. The man doesn't know how to respond and tells the boy to forget about the village. He then hands him a piece of paper and tells Lo to go to the place written on it where he'll be able to live safely. However, the MC doesn't care about that and keeps yelling, demanding answers. So the man replies that the entire village vanished and that the world they live in is not meant for a child like him, that he should try to forget the past. He removes Lo's hand, stands up, walks away, and states that this is all he can do. but inwardly, he becomes upset, thinking that the boy must keep living and that there's no reason for him to become another victim. Lo lowers his head and replies, "No." He then recalls Yuna's words, that even though he always seems so spaced out, when he truly tries, he's stronger than anyone. After remembering that, an intense energy begins to surround the MC, surprising the man, who quickly turns to see what the hell is happening. Lova, now furious and releasing an intense energy that resembles Konoha's tailed beast form, demands to know how he's supposed to forget what just happened. He then declares that he will go to the island and bring everyone back, no matter what it takes. He begins to think back to when he was little, when his parents died in a landslide. Surrounded by darkness, he was left alone until the villagers took him in. Yuna had always been by his side, and all of them were good people who couldn't ignore someone who was hurt. The man is stunned, wondering what absurd amount of prana he's feeling. Observing more closely, he questions whether the space around the boy is actually distorting. Prana is the mental energy of living beings, a power anyone can have, but few know it. However, talented individuals can use it consciously. Normally, it's colorless and invisible, but those with a great amount can make it visible, and some races are said to possess special prana. The man becomes even more worried, thinking the boy might be the survivor of Babel. As he prepares himself, he reflects that he wanted to prioritize protecting the boy, but now believes the kid would have escaped on his own in a few years anyway. He then draws his sword and throws it in front of Lo, making it clear that though he doesn't know both of their circumstances, if the boy truly wants to go to the island, then he must wield the sword. Releasing his own prana, he adds that if Lova has potential, he will train him. Lo listens intently. Then, he picks up the sword. The man, his power fully released, tells the MC to come at him with killing intent. Lua prepares himself, and without hesitation, charges forward. As he strikes, the man thinks to himself that this was expected, that the boy is a beginner with the sword. But as he observes Lo and crosses blades with him, he senses the pressure and, above all, the absurd prana waves. He becomes alarmed and, watching the boy unleash his incredible power, thinks to himself that Lova is definitely a monster. Lova launches another attack, this time much stronger, releasing a massive wave of destructive energy. After fighting with the boy for a while, they stop, and the man explains that the island Lo saw is called the Island of the Gods. He then explains that normally it floats above the vast sea, but occasionally appears in completely different places, erasing people and even entire lands. Because of that, he says he was trying to stop it, but once again arrived too late. According to a theory he heard, humans caught in that light may have been taken to the Island of the Gods. Love asks if entering that light would take him there as well. The man emphasizes that it's only a theory he heard, because even if those people are alive, there's no way to know what's being done to them. The MC becomes intrigued and asks what he should do. Then, the man says the first step is the direct route. The adventurer's ranking. Lo must reach the top 10. Lo asks him to explain that adventurer's ranking, so the man explains that adventurers are responsible for exploring and investigating unknown lands, and that, among all the rankings, this one has the most participants, and the top ranked are true monsters. He emphasizes that if the MC can reach the top 10, he'll be able to go to the Island of the Gods. Lo quickly grabs the man's clothes, thinking about this, but the man continues, saying the Island of the Gods is ranked number 1 among all danger zones, and that almost no adventurer has returned alive from there. So he asks if Lov still wants to go. Lova takes a deep breath and, full of confidence, makes it clear that he does. The man gets serious, stands up, and emphasizes that from now on, he will train Lo for 1 year, but only in the way of the sword. After that, Lo is to use the training as a foundation and climb the adventurer's ranking on his own. With that said, he introduces himself as Adol, the number 1 ranked knight, the strongest knight of humanity. He then asks the boy's name. Lo stands and replies that his name is Loi. The two shake hands, and Adol makes it clear that he won't go easy on him during training, since, after all, the boy was the first person ever to cut him with a single blow. After that, Lo understands that a hellish year has begun. Blisters burst on his hands and feet, muscles tore, bones shattered, and blood poured from every part of his body. Adol never spoke of the Island of the Gods again. almost as if saying Love had to discover the rest on his own, and if he couldn't, he should give up. As Love endured the harsh training, he kept thinking that the villagers might still be alive, and for now, all he could do was hold on to that belief. But he always wondered why the village vanished and what exactly the island of the gods was, and because of that, to uncover the truth, he knew he had to reach the top of the adventurer's ranking. So, 1 year passes. A doll asks if he thinks he's ready. Love replies that he's been ready for a long time but closes his eyes and remembers his friend's words, how she wanted to become a ranked adventurer and had invited him to go on an adventure with her. With that, he concludes that Yuna, who once dreamed of the outside world, is now gone, and that he never imagined he'd be the first to set off on a journey. He then opens his eyes and says that for now, he will carry Yuna's dream with him. Adol calls out to him and says they're leaving. Love answers yes, and adds that he will grow a lot, because he knows he's still growing. The MC is now 17 years old, and the disciple of the strongest knight of humanity, and his journey toward the island of the gods has just begun. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Valter, in the capital, Trakista, at the Trakista branch of the evaluation department, someone is lying on a table surrounded by books, sleeping, until they suddenly wake up, startled, realizing they're in trouble for having fallen asleep again. Upon meeting up with a girl, she asks if he spent the entire night checking the rankings again. He asks what's wrong with that, and emphasizes that he's an evaluator. The woman points out that that's exactly why he should take better care of his health, because unlike her, who only does office work, he's the one who determines people's rankings. Evaluators are sent all over the world to assess the abilities of rankers and update their rankings accordingly. Evaluators must have extensive knowledge and impartial judgment, since to evaluate someone's merit and position, they themselves have to pass various tests. Being one of the most demanding jobs there is, it's entrusted only to those who are specially chosen. However, he yells that even though he's an evaluator, he's at the lowest level, and to do what he wants, he needs to work hard and climb the rankings. The woman asks what exactly it is that he wants to do. He laughs and says he wants to do a lot of things, but the woman emphasizes that, for an evaluator, the fastest way to rise is to become the exclusive evaluator of a talented ranker. The boy says he knows that, but he still hasn't found a ranker he likes. The woman says he's being too picky. Luke replies that's not it. He explains that the current rankers are just so boring. Back then, competition used to be much fiercer, and now the top spots in nearly all the rankings are locked down. Because of that, he feels like it completely kills the meaning of his job. He makes it clear that the value of a ranking lies in constant updates. The woman laughs and says Luke really is addicted to rankings and thinks it's a serious case. Luke wonders if there's some new rising star out there who could turn everything upside down. As he opens the door, the teacher replies that maybe that rising star might be among the students there. Luke looks around and wants to know if this is already the third time just this year that they're doing the registration exam for the adventurer's ranking, and if it's always this crowded. The teacher says it's usually quieter, but wonders if it might be because the Azaban Forest was added to the Danger Zone rankings 2 months ago. Luke replies that that makes sense, so the teacher comments that she thinks there are quite a few promising people this time. She points out the guy standing by the window and says his name is Owldarkus, ranked 753rd in the mercenary ranking and leader of the Red Wolf mercenary group, considered one of the most promising rookies in the country, and the boy in front of him is Eddie Markman, ranked 402nd in the archer ranking, and his family is famous for archery. His father was once ranked 2nd, and his brother is currently in 7th place. She heard that even at his young age, Eddie's arrow speed is already in double digits, so he may have a bright future. The teacher then emphasizes that, besides those two, there are others who seem talented as well, and she points to another guy. Luke is surprised. Observing the person she pointed at, he says that guy is probably a commerce ranker, and the others are a knight, a sailor, and even a guide ranker. The teacher is astonished and says Luke really is impressive. He got them all right. Luke laughs and says, after all, he is an evaluator, and that you can more or less tell their field just by looking at them. He then explains that the adventurer ranking is special and useful, and that many people have been trying to register lately because it's essential for entering places like that forest. Suddenly, someone rings the doorbell. The teacher asks Luke to wait a moment. As she goes to the person, she welcomes him. Lo wants to know if that's where people register for the rankings. The teacher replies yes, and explains that the rankings are a system managed by the evaluation department. Evaluators are sent all over the country to assess the achievements and abilities of rankers. Because of that, ranking updates can be done anywhere an evaluator is present, but she emphasizes that initial registration can only be done at an official agency. The MC says he wants to register for the adventurer ranking. The teacher thinks that's great just in time, because the exam is about to start. So she asks if he wants to participate right away. He replies yes. So the teacher picks up some documents and asks him to please fill in his name in the marked spot, informing him that the registration fee is 3,000 mel. Lo hands over the money and fills out the form. As Luke approaches, the teacher tells the MC that everything is set and that his number for the exam is 53 and that he should wait in the room ahead. As Lo walks past Luke, Luke watches him closely. Then he comments that, apparently, there are still people who don't even know what the evaluation department is. The teacher confirms and emphasizes that it's been a while since she's had to explain that. As they watch the MC head toward the waiting room, the teacher asks if Luke can help her prepare the exam. He agrees and says doing some office work once in a while isn't so bad. After getting everything ready, the teacher announces that the registration exam for the adventurer ranking is about to begin. She explains that there will be 3 types of tests. The first will be written, then practical, and the last will be explained at the time. As Luke hands out the written tests, the teacher makes it clear to everyone that their final score will determine whether they pass or not, and that even if they fail one part, a high score on the others can make up for it. So, she asks everyone not to give up. With that, she announces the start of the written test, and everyone quickly begins. Some participants are visibly nervous, thinking the written exam is really difficult due to the broad subject matter. After some time, the teacher announces that the time is up. She then informs them that the practical test will take place in 2 hours in the forest outside the village, and that they will be guided there after the written exams are graded. After heading to a private room, the teacher asks Luke to help her grade the tests. They begin correcting them until Luke becomes very surprised by one particular test. He's looking at the exam of the boy with the lifeless stare from earlier and is left speechless, unable to believe what he's seeing. Everything is wrong, with each answer more absurd than the last. Luke sighs and thinks that the participants should consider their side too, because grading these ridiculous tests made by country bumpkins is torture. It doesn't take long before the 2 hours are up. The teacher leads the participants to the location of the second test and explains that the practical test will be a treasure hunt. Pointing to a bulletin board, she explains that they must deliver the items listed on it, but that they should check the point values on the right and aim for those with the highest scores. She emphasizes that fighting among themselves is forbidden and that whoever gets an item first keeps it. The competitors get excited. Some comment that they know medicinal herbs very well, and others say they're good at catching bugs. With that, the teacher shouts the start of the second practical test, and everyone quickly takes off running. The teacher comments that she'll finally get some rest now, but wonders how many will pass this stage. Luke says he thinks maybe half, since, judging by their movements, the participants this time seem more prepared. The teacher asks if anyone has caught Luke's attention. He sighs and replies that unfortunately, no one has. Not long after, Darkus shows up and wants to know if he was the first. He then hands in a Regil ore and earns 120 points. The teacher says there's still time left and asks if he's really going to stop now. He replies that he thinks so, since he's confident he already passed. But the teacher points out that if he earns more points now, he'll start with a higher ranking when he registers. He responds that he doesn't care about that, since his real job is as a mercenary and he doesn't care much about rankings. Then Eddie shows up, running, saying he thought he was first. The teacher says what he brought is a floke bird feather and that he earned 180 points. Eddie asks if that's not a bit too high, since in his village they usually eat floke birds. Darkus comments to the archer that he's acting full of himself over just a measly feather. Eddie says he wasn't showing off, Then he asked the mercenary if he knew that those birds fly silently at over 500 kilometers per hour, making them impossible to see with the naked eye. Darkus apologizes and says he didn't know the archer had such tricks up his sleeve, and in that case, thinks a clown nose would suit him better. Eddie starts getting irritated and asks if the mercenary wants to test that theory. Darkus smirks and says only if Eddie does. But the teacher tells them to calm down and thinks to herself that rankers always carry pride too big for their own good. Meanwhile, Luke gets excited and comments that that's exactly what makes them rankers. Then someone shows up, walking. Luke turns around, confused, so does the teacher, the archer, and the mercenary. It's the MC. He's dragging a massive bear. As he approaches the teacher, he tosses the defeated creature in front of her. Then he explains that he didn't know how to extract the red bear's gallbladder, so he brought the whole body. So he asks if he can turn it in like that. While Luke stares at the beast on the ground, the teacher replies yes, and awards Lo 300 points for the red bear's gallbladder. Meanwhile, the other participants, still hiding in the forest, see this and wonder who the hell this guy is who defeated a red bear alone. Luke tells the MC that despite his horrible written test, he still managed to recognize a red bear. Lo replies that they appear often near his village, so he knows those creatures well. Luke looks to the side and asks another guy if he saw the MC fight. The guy says yes, it happened right in front of him, but also says it's hard to say he really saw anything because it was so fast. As soon as the bear got close, the MC drew his sword, and in the blink of an eye, the red bear had already been cut down. Luke hears this and becomes intrigued, watching the MC closely. An hour later, in the underground training center, the teacher asks everyone if they know who adventurers should always be wary of. She then says it's beasts and humans. She explains that an adventurer's mission is to explore new lands, and naturally, that means heading into isolated regions. And out there, the threats are usually bandits or pirates. That's why the final test is a simulated battle, and everyone will fight each other. Since it's just to assess their skills, there's no need to be nervous. Eddie says he understands and adds that if they had explained that earlier, someone might have tried to cheat during the practical test, so that's why it was kept secret until now. Then, a huge guy approaches Darkus and asks for a fight. He also wants to know if, during the test, Darkus only picked up a rock because he's heard before that the mercenary ranking is full of loudmouth, tough guys. With that, he charges at Darkus, yelling and asking what kind of third-rate ranker he thinks he is, because he's about to crush him. In a flash, the mercenary draws his sword and, without much effort, strikes the big guy square in the chin with the hilt of his sword, knocking him to the ground and breaking several teeth. Darkus puts his sword away and apologizes to the teacher for the inconvenience, but says he couldn't ignore the insult. She responds that, considering the big guy's scores so far, he likely would have failed anyway, so she asked Darkus to pretend it didn't happen. As the big guy is carried away on a stretcher, a few competitors comment that even if he tried to make a comeback, it would have been foolish, since a third class in a major ranking means the guy's a monster. The teacher looks at both the mercenary and the archer and wonders who will end up facing Darkus, and whether it might be Eddie. That's when Luke calls out to her and asks if he can choose who will fight in one of the matches. The teacher is a bit puzzled by the request, but replies that it should be fine and doesn't see a problem with it. So the matches begin, featuring various competitors going head to head. Then, in the 8th match, the competitors are announced. Darkus and number 41, Eddie versus competitor number 53, Lo. Luke states that participants 27 and 41 will be a team, and the two of them will face participant 53. Darkus is confused and wants to know if the MC has gone crazy. Eddie says it's been a while since someone underestimated him like this. The teacher is flustered and asks if Luke is really okay with this. Extremely excited, he replies yes, and emphasizes that, if his eyes aren't mistaken, participant number 53 is a monster. Next, the competitors head to the center of the arena, while the teacher remains suspicious of this clash. Luke is excited, awaiting the outcome of his choice. Lova and his opponents get ready. Owl Darkus is the leader of the Red Wolf mercenary group. In the past, the Red Wolf group stood out by eradicating the Khmer infamy, which was ranked 62nd among criminal organizations. It's said that the young leader, Darkus, defeated 7 executives by himself, including the boss. Eddie Markman, on the other hand, is a young heir of the prestigious Markman family of archers. He was trained from a young age by his father, who was once ranked second among archers. Eddie was registered in the rankings at the age of 5, and there isn't a single archer who doesn't know this prodigy with the talent of his lineage. But now, these 2 big shots stand before an unknown young man. Thus, the teacher shouts for them to begin. Eddie wastes no time and fires his powerful arrow, which flies toward the MC at high speed, but he manages to dodge it with ease. However, Darkus notices the opening and charges as well, but Lo blocks the mercenary's strike, and so, the two begin clashing swords frantically. People watching start asking each other whether they can actually see or follow anything, as they can only hear the sound. Lo remains focused in the battle. Then he adds a bit more force to his strike, breaking the mercenary's guard, leaving him quite shaken. Thinking about his opponent's overwhelming strength, Lo tries to take advantage of the opening and prepares his attack, but quickly notices something coming his way. Eddie had performed his triple arrow shot. With a simple move, Lo slices one of the arrows in half and deflects the others, sending the projectiles flying toward the spectators behind them. One of those arrows nearly hits someone in the head, making the person tremble in fear, thinking they were about to be eliminated. Darkus then runs over to his duel partner and comments that their opponent is a swordsman, but quickly changes his mind and remarks that perhaps the MC is among the top-ranked knights. Eddie agrees with him and emphasizes that he's never seen anyone like this before. Lova wants to know if the two are ranked in other categories as well. Eddie says he's 402nd in the archer rankings, and Darkus says he's 753rd in the mercenary rankings. Lo says he understands and takes a deep breath. Then he unleashes his powerful prana and makes it clear that if he defeats them, he's sure he'll reach the 3-digit ranks. His aura begins to fill the entire arena, making Eddie anxious and leaving the mercenary uneasy, wondering how an unknown managed to release such an absurd aura out of nowhere. Even Luke is impressed, wondering if this is really prana, as the power is so immense that its color can be seen with the naked eye. However, Eddie prepares his arrow and points out that rankings aren't just about professions. While he may be 402nd among archers in the sniper ranking, which evaluates accuracy, he's 78th. But right after saying that, he's shocked, having been attacked without even realizing it. Thus, Lo turns to Darkus and begins walking toward him. With a piercing gaze, he startles the mercenary, and before Darkus can even react, Lo suddenly appears behind him. As soon as the MC places his blade against the mercenary's neck, Darkus shouts, asking Lo to wait. He drops his sword and yells that he gives up. Then he looks at the fallen body of the archer and says he has to work later, so he can't afford to get knocked out like Eddie. The MC reflects for a moment on what the mercenary just said, then puts away his sword and says he understands. Darkus looks back, observing the MC intently, and thinks that he's definitely a monster, and wonders who the hell this guy could be. People are also shocked, commenting that the unknown guy managed to defeat 2 triple-digit ranked fighters way too easily. Luke is left speechless as well. Then the teacher shouts, announcing that the winner is number 53. However, she notices Luke running off and immediately wants to know where he's going. Luke heads to his room, turns on his computer, and quickly logs into the evaluator's exclusive database to search for the MC. He's very surprised to see that his name is Lo Tuli. He's 17 years old, but has no prior ranking history, and wonders how someone like that already has such skills. As he reflects further, he thinks that not even the evaluation department seemed to know anything about him, which makes sense since he came from a very remote area. Luke keeps researching and sees that Lo isn't a criminal and doesn't belong to any special sect. With shining eyes, he feels overjoyed, thinking he finally hit the jackpot, but he still wonders where this kind of talent had been hiding all this time. Then he rushes out again, and as soon as he opens the door, he yells, calling out to Lo Tuli and asking him to be his exclusive ranker. However, around the MC, several other people are already trying to convince him to hire a personal evaluator. Luke gets really frustrated, thinking he was too late, but when he sees the 2 women there, he gets furious and thinks they should investigate someone's background before making offers like that. Loe, a bit confused, wants to know what an exclusive evaluator is. Before he even finishes asking, Luke runs up and yells that he'll explain everything. He says that an exclusive evaluator is someone assigned to a single ranker, responsible for updating their rank regularly. Normally, one would have to wait for the evaluation department to send someone to update their rank. But with an exclusive evaluator, it can be done instantly, anywhere, and that's highly valued by adventurers who are always traveling. He then searches for something in his bag, and once he finds it, he shows a device and emphasizes that evaluators carry a device called a ranking telegram, or rank cell, to always keep rankings up to date. With that, Luke makes it clear that if the MC wants to rise quickly through the ranks, hiring an exclusive evaluator is the best path. Lo says that if it's about ranking up efficiently, then he has a condition. He turns around and asks all the evaluators present if any of them can take him to the top 10 in the adventurer rankings. This leaves everyone stunned by the MC's bold question. Some evaluators comment that the top 10 is filled with monsters, and others say his swordsmanship is excellent, but think that alone isn't enough to get there. Lo doesn't like hearing that at all. Luke, seeing him walk away, quickly chases after him, yelling for him to wait. She keeps running after the MC, even outside the department. When she gets close, she calls out his name and asks him to stop. Out of breath, Luke asks why Lo wants to reach the top 10 of the adventurer rankings. He replies that it's none of her business, but Luke pleads for the MC to let him make it his business. He then shouts that he wants to be his exclusive evaluator and that he'll guide him all the way to the top 10. Lo just watches him, but then he turns and, as he walks away, makes it clear that he doesn't want to put a child in danger. Luke becomes furious at being called a child and insists that before being a child, he's an evaluator, and frankly, the MC is also just a kid. But Lo says that even if that weren't the case, he has no intention of hiring anyone because he doesn't want to get others involved. Luke then yells that there's something he has to do. He explains that he has a mission to fulfill, even if it costs his life, and for that, he wants the MC's help. Lo looks back, and seeing the boy's confidence, he suddenly remembers the time he said the same thing to Adol, declaring that he wanted to go to the island and that he would definitely bring everyone back. So, he says that he also has something he needs to do. With that, the MC approaches the boy, who then extends his hand and introduces himself, saying his name is Luke Imeldia and that he's going to guide him to become one of the best. Lo introduces himself too. The two shake hands, sealing the deal. Night falls, and in a house, Luke shows the MC his room. He then says he rented it for a few days and that they can use it as a base for now. Loa thanks him and says he has good skills. Luke throws his bag onto the bed and says it was nothing, but then he starts yelling, saying he didn't expect Loa to set up a trial period like that, since he had proposed trying the partnership for 1 week. Lo apologizes and explains it was just a precaution. Luke, burning with confidence, declares that he'll prove his worth in 1 week, and that in the end, it'll be the MC who ends up begging him to stay. A little embarrassed, Lo says that would be great. Luke asks him not to talk like he's someone else. He knows Lo is amazing in combat, but outside of that, he seems totally disconnected. Lo says he hears that a lot. Then, Luke's rank cell beeps. He grabs it and says the test results are in. He shows that Lo's rank is 2,758th in the adventurer ranking. Luke congratulates him for passing the registration test for the adventurer ranking and asks if it isn't great to already be in the 2000s. Lo says he thought he'd land in the triple digits. Luke is confused and asks why. The MC says it's because both of the opponents he faced were in the triple digits. Luke says she gets his reasoning, but explains that the adventurer ranking has more people than the others, and the competition is tougher. No matter how strong he is, there's a limit to how high he can start. She also explains there are rankings beyond professions. For example, her position in the sword speed ranking is 58th, which is a great result. Lo asks if that's for real. Luke is shocked by the question and emphasizes that, from the evaluation department's perspective, that number represents his talent. The MC wants to know if the two he fought also have different rankings like that. Luke says yes, and shows Darkus's data. In addition to being 753rd in the mercenary ranking, he's 521st in the swordsman ranking, 209th in the special cleanup ranking, 2,831st in the informant ranking, and 86th in the trustworthy leader ranking. As for the archer Eddie Markman, Lova already knows he's 402nd in the archer ranking, but in the sniper ranking, he's 78th. In the reconnaissance ranking, he's 211th, and finally, in the mushroom cultivation ranking, Eddie is 19th. So Luke emphasizes that it's possible to enter several rankings. That way, it's easier to get work, which is why she'd like the MC to register in other rankings too. However, Lo makes it clear he's not looking for work. Luke says she had a feeling and adds that even though they've only known each other for a short time, she thinks she's already starting to understand him. With that, she says that, basically, the MC wants to get into the top 10 as quickly as possible and go to the island of the gods. Lo immediately wants to know how she knows that. Luke explains it's because that's the only special privilege granted to those who reach the top 10 in the adventurer ranking. Then she wants to know if he'll tell her his reason after the trial period. Lo takes a deep breath and says he will. Luke gets excited and says she'll tell him her reasons too. The MC replies that that makes it fair for both of them. Luke says fairness is important, but her reasons are hard to explain to someone who just got registered. Then, changing her expression, she says she's after the dark side of the rankings. Lo is confused and asks her to be more specific. However, Luke asks the MC to leave that topic aside and instead asks where his power came from, especially his swordsmanship, because that's not something you can learn overnight. Lo explains that a year ago, he became the disciple of a knight named Adol, which leaves Luke very surprised upon hearing that name. He runs over to the MC, grabs him, and demands to know if he's really talking about the #1 knight. Lo thinks of Adol saying exactly that and replies that yes, that's what he said. But he points out that even as his disciple, he was only with him for a year. Luke yells that even so, that's bombshell news, since Adol is famous for never teaching swordsmanship to anyone, and that many have asked to be trained by him, but all were refused. He adds that if there were a ranking for disciple rejections, Adol would definitely be top 1. He then comments that people say Adol was waiting to pass on his techniques to the highest ranked knight of the next generation, and that's why so many knights are desperately trying to climb the ranks. Luke emphasizes that he never imagined the MC would be the one to inherit them, and says other knights would faint if they found out. Lo wants to know if Adol is really that big of a deal. Luke freaks out and shouts that of course he is. He's #1, which means he's the strongest in the world. The MC says he thinks he beat him in a sword duel. Luke screams that that has to be a lie. It's impossible, and frankly says that Lo's expression is so indifferent while dropping that kind of bomb like it's nothing. That's why he really wants to know how Adol trained him, and he feels like he needs to recheck the data. While reviewing the MC's info, Luke comments that even when looking through the ranking database, the name Tuli has never appeared before. So he wants to know if that last name is an alias. Lo is puzzled by the question. Then he remembers Adol asking him for his surname, and how, at the time, he didn't even know what that was. But Adol said he figured it must be a cultural difference. He then made it clear that if Lo wanted to go to the island of the gods by the shortest path, from that moment on, he should say his name is Lo Tuli. It would still be risky, but if he did well, some clues would naturally begin to appear. Lo had just listened to all of this, and staring at the massive crater before him, responded that he would do it. So, the MC says that Tuli isn't an alias, it's the name of his beloved family. Luke says he understands and thanks him for sharing that. He then says they'll wrap things up for today, and that his evaluator work is done as well. So, he figures he can finally take off his hat, and as soon as he does, Lo is quite surprised. Looking at Luke, the MC asks if she was a girl this whole time. Luke gets embarrassed and asks if he only just realized that. Lova is a bit sheepish and apologizes. The girl starts trembling with rage and yells, wanting to know if he thinks an apology is enough. The next day, Luke is reading a newspaper and notices that the MC woke up early. He says he went to fetch some water, which confuses Luke, but Lova says it's nothing and wishes her good morning. While tying up her hair, Luke calls the MC to have breakfast. As she picks up her hat, she says the journey is going to be a long one, but now they're taking the first step, as they'll begin crafting a strategy to reach the top 10 of the adventurer rankings. As they head to a place to have breakfast, Luke explains that to climb the rankings, Lo needs achievements as an adventurer, and that territory development or explosions are just the basics. It's possible to do it on his own, but she recommends accepting missions for now. She goes on to say that there are many people who need the strength of an adventurer for tasks like gathering, investigation, and so on. And since they're missions, he can also earn rewards, making them ideal for beginners. The evaluator grabs her rank cell and explains that these missions can be accepted through the evaluation department or, depending on the country, through a guild. But she believes that if she's right, the MC might be able to do everything with one little thing she's about to show him. Lo wants to know if what she's using is the rank cell she mentioned earlier, because if it is, he thinks it's really practical. She replies that if she becomes his exclusive evaluator, she'll be able to use the rank cell freely. Lo then asks if there's any mission that would significantly boost his ranking. While searching for something, Luke says all he has to do is take the most difficult ones, since the evaluation department missions usually indicate how much they'll influence the ranking. The MC, looking at the mission difficulties, says that in that case, he wants to take the first one on the list. Luke sees that it's a rank 7 danger zone mission to retrieve the hidden treasure in the submerged temple of Lokiana. She immediately yells that it's impossible and explains that at the MC's current level, he doesn't stand a chance. Lo insists that they'll never know unless they try. Luke keeps yelling that she does know, even without trying. She asks Lo to trust an evaluator's judgment and stresses that the mission he picked is way too hard for him, and she thinks he'll die before even rising in rank. Ignoring her warnings, Lova asks her to let him try anyway, and then questions her, doesn't the Island of the Gods rank number 1 in danger zones? He becomes serious and makes it clear that if he backs down now, he'll have no chance of ever getting there. She's caught off guard and thinks he's even more stubborn than she expected, so she realizes she has to find a way to convince him. Just then, someone approaches and asks if they're having a problem. Luke is surprised to see it's Mr. Lud. He greets her, saying it's been a while. Lo immediately wants to know who this person is. Luke says she'll introduce them. She explains that the man is Lud Broward, a very powerful adventurer, ranked 11th in the adventurer rankings. The MC is shocked to hear that the man in front of him holds such a high position. He immediately remembers Adolf saying that the adventurer ranking has more people than any other, and that the top rankers are true monsters. So, while watching Lud speak with Luke, he concludes that this man is one of them, an elite ranker. Then he reflects that the man before him is ranked 11th, and considers that if Lud climbs just one more spot, he'll be eligible to challenge the Island of the Gods. Luke suddenly gets excited and tells Mr. Lud she has a favor to ask. She then yells for him to go all out and hit Lo as hard as he can. With that, they head to a battle arena. Mr. Lud soon appears and apologizes to the MC for making him wait, but explains that he didn't expect Lo to challenge him to a duel, so he went to borrow a weapon. He adds that the weapon feels a bit too light, but it'll do. Lo introduces himself. Lud comments that the MC seems to speak very formally and tells him to relax, because in the adventurer rankings, nobody cares about that. He then says that Luke recently updated his ranking and that she's truly amazing. He notes that not only does she have a lot of knowledge, but also the conviction to create accurate rankings, a rare passion among evaluators. That's why, since it's a request from her, he wants to help her as much as he can. While spinning his weapon, Lud comments that her request, to teach a lesson to a stubborn rookie, makes it clear from a mile away just how much she cares about him. Love starts getting nervous. Looking at his opponent, he can already feel just by looking at him how strong he is. Just thinking about charging forward makes him feel like he'll be skewered by the spear Lud is holding. Suddenly, Luke shouts to the MC, emphasizing that this is his golden opportunity and that he needs to understand the scale of the world at least once. Lo reflects on that and remembers the Island of the Gods completely destroying the city of Tori. Then, he releases his incredible prana and replies that he already understands. With that, the fight between Lud Broward, 11th in the adventurer rankings, and Lo Thule, 2,758th in the adventurer rankings, is about to begin. It doesn't take long before Luke yells for the two of them to begin. Without wasting a second, Lova charges at Mr. Lud, who easily blocks the MC's attack. Lova doesn't stay still. He prepares his next strike and unleashes a powerful slash, but Lud manages to dodge that as well. Still, he notes that the boy channeled prana into his sword and released it all in a single blow, which makes him wonder if the kid is also reinforcing his hands and feet with prana to boost his agility. As he continues blocking the MC's attacks, Lud begins to think that he recognizes the sword style being used, but at the same time, believes it to be impossible. In his mind, the Sword Saint's style is passed down to only one successor, and there's no way that guy would have taught a secret sword technique, one passed down to a single person per generation, to a mere child. However, Lo takes advantage of Lud's distraction and quickly moves behind him, saying it's not the time to be daydreaming. But just as he delivers his strike, the veteran blocks the blow without even needing to turn around. Lud looks over his shoulder and replies that actually, he's completely relaxed. Lo doesn't like hearing that. Lud begins to fight a bit more seriously, and Lo has to push himself to block his advances. Lud keeps thinking about the boy's prana. He suspects it might already surpass his own, especially considering the intense glow that's clearly visible to the naked eye. He then steps back briefly, which leaves Lo a little confused. Lud asks what race the MC is from. Lo becomes even more confused and asks him to clarify. That's when the veteran bluntly says that pretending to be clueless won't work, because the prana he's seeing coming from Lo isn't something one develops over time. Then, he changes his mind, spins his spear, and slams it forcefully into the ground, declaring that if Lo won't talk, he'll find out the hard way. He wants to know if Lo can use enchantments too. The MC becomes worried. He doesn't even know what that is. So Lud begins chanting his enchantment. An intense surge of prana is released, flowing throughout the entire arena and leaving Lo startled. Lud continues reciting, and several spiritual spears begin to appear in the air above. He then finishes his enchantment from the tribe of the wind, surprising even Luke. Lud becomes serious and demands that the MC use his own enchantment as well, otherwise he'll die. Lo quickly puts distance between himself and Mr. Lud. Lud extends both arms forward, launching his spear attack at the MC, who is quite startled to see such a powerful assault coming his way. He tries his best to repel and dodge them, but since there are so many and they are incredibly fast, he ends up being struck by a few. Lud warns the MC that what he's doing won't work, as an ordinary sword can't block his enchantment. That said, he makes a motion with his finger, and a new wave of spears flies toward Lo's back. Once again, Lo tries to dodge, but gets hit. After the attack ends, he becomes very worried about the outcome of the battle. He starts to remember Adol telling him that he's still a bit rough when it comes to prana control, but that once he gets used to it, he'll gradually be able to use techniques. At the time, Lo didn't quite understand and asked his master to be clearer. So Adol, while preparing, asked Lo to pay close attention to the most basic technique. Recalling what his master had said, Lov takes the same stance as Adol and, while charging his prana, performs the technique of the shimmering blade, creating a powerful energy slash that quickly heads toward Lud. Lud, seeing the attack coming, thinks it's indeed very fast, but he quickly spins his spear, managing to block the MC's attack. However, Lo seizes the moment while Lud is busy blocking and moves in to deliver a close-range strike. But Lud had foreseen this. With a wave of his hand, he commands another rain of spears to fall on the MC before he can complete his move. Lo still tries to land his slash, but the spears keep blocking his path. Lud, while preparing himself, thinks it was a high-speed slash, invisible to the naked eye. He then grips his spear firmly and throws it with all his might at the MC, who tries to block the powerful attack. But the blow is so strong it breaks through his defense, sending him flying backward. Lo is in disbelief that he's being defeated. Lud comments that the boy is truly admirable, but snaps his fingers, launching even more spears toward Lo. This leaves both Luke in disbelief that the veteran is still attacking, and Lo in shock, thinking he won't be able to defend himself. Lud gets serious and says that, even so, the wall the MC is trying to climb right now is very high, and that he shouldn't underestimate the adventurer rankings. With that, he intensifies his attacks even more, hitting the MC with full force and creating a massive explosion from the impact. After the dust settles, Lo is lying on the ground, completely knocked out. Thus, the winner is Lud Broward, 11th in the adventurer rankings. He then walks over to Luke and asks if she's satisfied. Slightly embarrassed, she says yes and thanks him. She then comments that she now believes Lova must have understood. Lud remarks that she speaks nicely, but that until the end, he believed the boy could win. Luke responds that she just thought maybe it was possible. Lud asks if it's because the MC was Adol's disciple. Luke wants to know if he figured it out. Lud says he knew the moment he saw that high-speed slash. It's a technique from the Sword Saints style, but he wonders if that's really the case, since the Sword Saints style is passed down to a single successor, being the most powerful form of swordsmanship, inherited by elite knights for generations. Therefore, Lud points out that even so, the MCA and Adventurer ranker inherited it, and from the perspective of a Knight ranker, it's as if something sacred had been stolen. At that point, Luke begins to freak out and yells that, seen from that perspective, it's best to avoid low crossing paths with other Knight rankers from now on. Lud makes it clear that would be wise, as in the worst case scenario, he could end up dead, and if he acted as a Knight ranker, maybe everything could be resolved without issues. Luke starts thinking about it and quickly remembers Lo saying that he also has something he needs to do no matter what. She then comments that it will probably be impossible, but she emphasizes that, in truth, the reason she believed in him, aside from the Sword Saint style, is because Lova said he landed a hit on Adol, and that's why she had faith in him. Lud is visibly surprised and, looking at the unconscious MC on the ground, says he finds that impossible, because with Lo's current level, there's no way he could have landed even a single blow on Adol. Luke says she thought the same, but the MC doesn't seem like the type to lie, so she believes there might be a reason behind it. Lud starts reflecting on this, and soon recalls the moment when Lo was attacking him with everything he had. That Sword Saint style was already shocking, but the prana glow surrounding him was something else. He then turns, grabs his spear, and says he suspects that Lo probably has enchantments too, because if he had used them, he believes he might have actually lost the duel. Sometime later, the MC is dreaming of a woman singing. She turns toward him, and just as she reaches out to caress him, the old lady from the village, Torvi, bursts through the door, demanding to know what that singing is all about. She then calls the woman an idiot and makes it clear that it's exactly because of the poem she's singing that they can't leave the village. With that, she turns around and, as she walks away, insists that the woman must never let those words slip from her mouth again. The woman is left embarrassed, but apologizes to Love just as he wakes up from his dream. He's all bandaged up, lying in a bed. As he tries to sit up, he wants to know where he is. Luke, surprised to see him waking up, quickly tells him that he's in the infirmary at the evaluation department and that he slept for a whole day. He's shocked and asks if he really slept that long. Luke confirms and says he passed out like someone had flipped a switch. The doctor said it looked like accumulated mental fatigue. She adds that she doesn't know exactly what's going on, but wants to know if he doesn't think he's pushing himself too fast. Lo is surprised by the question, and suddenly remembers when he was being intensely attacked by Lord Lud's enchantment. He then says maybe she's right. Luke watches him, walks over to the bed, and says there's something important she needs to tell him. She asks if he knows what enchantments are. Very surprised, he answers no. So Luke explains that enchantments are a special way of using prana, something only certain races can do, and many of the top rankers can use them. Lo asks if Lord Lud is one of them. Luke replies yes, saying he's a warrior of the Broward tribe. She then explains that the Broward tribe is a combat-focused race, skilled in hunting, and they live in the southern swamps. Because their techniques are passed down orally in the form of poems within the tribes, they are called enchantments, but there's also a genetic component to it, which makes them generally hard to learn as an adult. Lo starts thinking about that, but Luke emphasizes that Lord Lud had said it seemed like the MC might also possess enchantments. She then asks if he has any idea about that. Lo reflects on it, and the image of the woman from his dream comes to mind. He replies that he thinks he might. Luke gets completely excited and happy to hear that, shouting that enchantments are a major trump card for a ranker, and now she's sure he can become a top ranker. With that, she grabs the rank cell and says she's found the perfect mission for him. She explains that it's a scouting mission in the Azaban Forest, an ecological survey in a forest that was ranked 48th onto the list of dangerous zones 2 months ago. Lo says that if it's just an ecological survey, he wants to know if that means he's just going to be investigating animals. Luke answers that's basically part of it, but in reality, people have recently been disappearing in that forest, one after another, and adventurers who took this mission have vanished without a trace. At first, it was those ranked in the thousands, but recently, even an adventurer ranked 800 has gone missing. That said, Luke makes it clear that if the MC manages to uncover the reason behind these disappearances, by her calculations, he will easily climb 200 positions, but the risk will also increase proportionally. Lo gets out of bed and, looking into Luke's eyes, says he will accept the mission, but he wants to know if she only recommended it because she thought he could handle it. She shouts, replying that it's obvious. Then she starts registering the mission. Luke also warns that in the Azaban forest, there are animals whose hunting is forbidden and also restricted areas. But she believes everything will be fine as long as he is there. Still, Lo needs to be careful. The MC asks what will happen if he doesn't follow the rules. Luke answers that his rank will simply drop. She explains that no matter how skilled he is, if he goes around destroying the ecosystem or fails mission after mission, his reputation as an adventurer will be ruined. She makes it clear that his ranking is his credibility. Lo says he understands and will try to do everything properly. After that, Luke informs him that she has already registered the mission and it has been accepted. She gets excited and shouts to Loa that this mission is the beginning of a new chapter, since it's the first step for him to skyrocket up the adventurer rankings. She then emphasizes that they will both give it their all. Lova gives a slight smile and says yes. Meanwhile, in the forest in question, a man is being brutally grabbed by the neck. From a distance, someone asks if the person who was strangling him killed anyone else. He replies that he doesn't care, and that the evaluation department doesn't care about trash rankers either. Then he walks over to a cage, kicks it, and looking at the creature inside, says that anyway, trying to climb the ranks the way they are is just stupid. The man, watching the creature inside, smiles and says that a Unihoceros, with just that beast horn, can quickly get him into the triple-digit ranks. Rosso Cruel, 7th in the smuggler rankings, makes it clear that brute force alone won't raise his rank, since he exists because of those who suffer from this kind of injustice. The other man replies as if saying he won't give up such a good hunting ground. This is Dalkin Iris, who shouts that he'll soon reach the top 100 since he's currently ranked 672nd among adventurers. After a while, on the next day, Lo and Luke arrive at the forest to begin the mission. The MC hands his identification to a guard, who says he'll check his rank first. Once verified, he announces their entry has been approved. Lo says he knows it's a bit late to ask, but wants to know how many people are in the adventurer rankings. Luke replies that there are about 30,000 adventurers, but only around 20,000 are active. She then emphasizes that his prana doesn't match this rank, since the adventurer rank tends to be quite different from his other rank. Lovi is confused and asks her to be clearer, so she explains that, for example, if he has a 4-digit adventurer rank, that might mean he's in the 3-digit range in another rank. It's obvious that the higher his adventurer rank, the higher his other ranks tend to be. She points out that the MC's fencing rank is already in the 2 digits, and that he's stronger than the opponents he faced in the exam. After learning this, Loa comments that he still needs to get stronger. Luke looks him straight in the eyes, and then shouts that, in that case, they can't waste any time starting the adventure. Inside the Azaban forest, Lova is puzzled by something, and Luke immediately asks what it is. He says he thinks there's something strange about the forest. Luke smiles and asks if he finally noticed, because only an experienced adventurer could sense the danger of that place with just one look. She emphasizes that an ordinary person would never notice, and that's why the dangerous zone rankings exist. Suddenly, surprised by something, and seeing several beasts ahead, Lo explains that the forest was included in that ranking because 2 months ago, a huge outbreak of demonic beasts was discovered. Quickly, Lo draws his sword as several creatures rush toward them. Luke shouts that the MC has to protect her. While he reassures her she can stay calm, he begins striking the demonic beasts, easily eliminating them. Suddenly, from above, a huge bird comes crashing down toward him, but Lova grabs the creature's beak and slashes it. Then, he uses his technique, the Gale Slash, hitting several demonic beasts at once. Luke asks if it was the Knight Adel who taught him that technique. Lova confirms and says he learned some techniques but can't use them all yet, and thinks he might be able to use the second technique now. He says this while looking at a huge bloody orc in front of him, ranked 126th in monster danger level. The massive creature grows furious, and while the MC holds his sword firmly, he says he thinks there's only one way to know if he's learned the technique. With that, he releases his powerful prana and uses the half-lotus technique on the bloody orc. However, it has no effect on the creature. Lo doesn't like this, and Luke is shocked to see the attack fail against the creature. The orc then runs after the two. Luke asks what on earth the MC is doing. He replies that he failed, as he thought it would work. But Luke shouts, asking if he forgot he had to protect her. Then she notices something and warns Lova there's a cliff right ahead. The MC grabs her arm and jumps off the cliff. Luke starts screaming like crazy, terrified. While falling, Lo aims for some large trees, and as he lands on one, begins to leap quickly through the branches until he reaches the ground safely. Luke, however, is quite stunned, almost as if her soul is leaving her body. Lo breathes deeply and says it was a close call. Luke goes mad with anger and yells at him not to even think about saying phew, and that he should warn her before doing such crazy things. The MC apologizes and says Adel trained him that way, so it became a habit. Then he notices something and, looking around, realizes they have arrived. Luke gets excited and says they're very lucky because this is the area they needed to investigate. She explains that she has been investigating the Azaban forest since it was ranked a dangerous zone and has explored 80% of it, with 20% remaining unexplored right there, a monster nesting area. Lovie observes some plants and creatures, and Luke asks why he is distracted. Impressed, he says it's the first time he has seen creatures and plants like these. He thinks he now understands what it means to be an adventurer. He remembers his friend Yuna inviting him to go on an adventure together. He concludes this is the adventure she always dreamed of. Suddenly, a creature approaches them. Lo quickly draws his sword, but Luke steps in front and shouts for him to stop. Looking at the creature, she says it seems injured. Luke approaches the animal, and Lo asks if he should not defeat it. Luke replies absolutely not. Looking at the horn, she says it's the number 4 beast in the rare species ranking, nearly extinct. She kneels and sees that the creature is wounded. The MC asks if she knows how to treat it. Luke says rankers often get hurt, so she learned basic first aid and took care of him too when he got beaten by Lord Lod. She then calls Luf over and informs him that they will set up a base there that day, because as an agent of the evaluation department, she can't just abandon the creature. Lovie agrees, but Luke turns around and shouts that, just so he knows, taking care of a real horn counts as ecological research, but he shouldn't get the wrong idea. It's not that she's choosing it over the MC. Lo tells her to calm down and says he understands. When night falls, they make a campfire. Luke lies beside the creature while the MC trains a little. He takes a deep breath and tries to use the half-lotus technique again, this time on a tree. However, something happens during the attack, and as the technique hits the tree, Lova realizes it didn't work. He takes a deep breath and says it's no use. Then he falls to the ground and starts thinking about Lord Lod's enchantment. He concludes that in that battle, he wasn't able to do anything at all. Looking up at the stars, he thinks that like this, he will never reach the island of the gods. Because of that, he knows he must become stronger at all costs. So, he stands up and thinks about what Luke said, about what Lord Lod had mentioned, that he thought the MC might also have enchantments. He crosses his legs and reflects on enchantments. After some time, dawn breaks, and Lo, who was sleeping leaned against a tree, hears a noise. Quickly, he asks Luke what's happening. She explains that the creature suddenly began to thrash about. The beast starts growling, and as Love approaches, he comments that it seems the creature has improved. Luke explains that the royal horn heals very quickly, and with the right treatment, it will get well in no time. However, she emphasizes that the creature is still just a baby and would normally become attached to them. But judging by the animal's skittish behavior, her suspicion was correct. Someone deliberately hurt it. Love wants to know what she means. She asks him to look closely at the creature's horn. She then asks if he sees where it's broken, because it looks like it was attacked by an illegal hunter. She says the creature's horn is like a miracle medicine, which is why they were constantly captured, and that's how they ended up on the rare species ranking. Even though hunting is prohibited, the demand never ends, so people continue hunting in secret. On the black market, it's sold as unicorn horn. Suddenly, the creature growls and lunges at Luke, but the MC is alert and blocks the creature's charge, protecting his friend. The creature trembles from the impact it had on its horn, and Lova quickly notices this. Out of nowhere, the creature runs into the forest, while Luke shouts, asking it to calm down. Lova feels a little embarrassed, thinking he scared the beast, but wants to know if Luke will follow it. She answers yes, saying she knows that even though the animal is recovering, it's still not 100%. While putting on her shirt, she says that until now there was no record of a royal horn in the Azaban forest, and following the animal is part of the ecological research. As she says this, Lo quickly gets ready and, once prepared, says he will go ahead, but Luke tells him to take care and warns that she thinks there may be hunters hiding in the forest. Lo turns and asks what he should do if he encounters one. Luke looks confused and asks the MC to be clearer. Lo wants to know if defeating one of the hunters will increase his rank. She replies that it depends on their rank, but it is possible. With that, the MC rushes off at full speed, saying he will take out everyone he finds along the way. As he runs, Lo thinks the creature is very fast since he can no longer see it. Then he notices some tracks on a few trees and thinks that the creature must have passed that way. Suddenly, he's startled to see an arrow coming his way. He jumps backward at the last second, dodging the arrows. Then, a man with a sword appears behind the MC, saying he should blame his own bad luck. While attacking, he makes it clear he's in a bad mood. Lo quickly turns and strikes, managing to intercept the attack coming his way. The man who appeared out of nowhere is shocked, thinking he recognizes the color of the MC's prana. Then he shouts, asking Lo to wait. Lo is surprised because he recognizes that voice. He looks up and sees that it's Darkus. Eddie is there too. Still, he wants to know who they are, after all. This makes both of them nervous, wondering how he dares forget their names. So they introduce themselves again. Sometime earlier, to be more precise, the day after the adventurer ranking registration exam inside the department, Darkus was looking to accept a mission, and the person in charge asked which ranking he wanted to take the mission from. As the mercenary replied that he wanted one from the adventurer ranking, Eddie came running in. As soon as he got close, he shouted that he wanted to take a mission. Then, noticing Darkus beside him, the two simply stared at each other. After that, they went to another place, and both Eddie and Darkus just kept looking at each other. When they were about to speak, they ended up speaking at the same time. Eddie, feeling nervous, told the mercenary to speak first. However, Darkus refused and asked the archer to go ahead instead. So the archer took a deep breath and asked if the mercenary had found anything out about the swordsman who had defeated them. Darkus replied that he had, but he hadn't managed to get any concrete information, and that, as hard as it might be to believe, he thought the MC had never had any rank up until now. Eddie remarked that it might not seem like it, but in the archer ranking, he was considered a prodigy. Still, Lo had wounded his pride so deeply, losing so badly to an unranked rookie was unacceptable. Darkus was also bothered by it, and soon remembered how people had congratulated him, saying he had done a good job. Then, some had asked how it went in the adventurer ranking. The mercenary replied that he had managed to register. Everyone got excited, saying it was expected from their captain, and that now they could take on a wider variety of missions. A girl commented that she bet their captain had given the other candidates a hard time, but Darkus replied that it wasn't quite like that. The others laughed, saying, "Of course you did," while others joked that holding back his strength must have been the hardest part for their captain. But Darkus, furious, slammed his fist on the table, breaking it. The members were confused, wondering why their captain was so upset. Enraged, Darkus was thinking about the MC and how he hadn't even looked at him properly, almost as if treating him like trash. So, he made it clear to his guild members that the next day, they would triple their training. The girl then asked, since he had registered in the adventurer ranking, shouldn't they start taking new missions? Darkus clenched his fist tightly and stated that the world was much bigger than they all imagined, and that he himself would go back to training seriously. Remembering all this, he told the archer that his pride had also been hurt because he hadn't planned to focus on the adventurer ranking, but he couldn't go on like that. Eddie said his adventurer rank was 6,725. Darkus replied that his was 6,301, and that Lo Tuli, the guy who had defeated them, was ranked 2,728. The archer remarked that they were only about 4,000 ranks behind him, and that it would be a piece of cake. The mercenary emphasized that it seemed that they now had the same goal. With that, he invited the archer to take a mission together. He mentioned that there was a forest that had recently been added to the dangerous zones ranking. Darkus asked if Eddie meant the Azabam Forest, because if so, he thought the more dangerous the place, the better it was for climbing the ranks. Back to the present, the MC was staring at the two of them, until all three heard a loud noise and were quite surprised. Lo sheathed his sword and told the two they would talk later. With that, he sprinted at full speed toward the source of the sound. But the archer quickly caught up to him and explained that a wounded royal horn had appeared, and he thought there might be hunters after it. He then asked if Lo wanted to protect the beast. The MC replied that he did, and thought the archer was quite fast, since he had caught up in an instant. As they kept running, Eddie explained that when moving through the forest, it was best to use the uneven terrain. So, he said he would show him, and increased his speed even more, taking advantage of the rough ground. Lo watched the archer run and thought that he was truly impressive. However, he does the same as the archer and increases his speed. Eddie calls out to the MC and, pointing ahead, says that the beast has caught the royal horn. The two soon come face to face with a huge, sinister creature holding the royal horn beast in its grasp. Quickly, the demonic beast lashes out its tentacles toward the two. Lo manages to cut some coming his way, but knows he can't get any closer and might have to use a long-range slash. However, he realizes he can't, since the royal horn would be caught in the middle of his attack. So, he asks the archer if he can create an opening. Eddie is confused and wants to know why the MC suddenly wants him to make an opening. Just then, Darkus appears shouting, telling the archer to aim for the huge creature's eyes and for Lo to keep running. With that, Eddie fires his arrows and the MC runs off. The archer's attack hits the creature's eyes dead on, causing it to roar loudly before falling to the ground. Lo rushes in at full speed, and as he gets close, the creature opens its massive mouth, but Darkus shouts for Lo to aim for the demon beast's legs. Quickly, the MC ducks and aims at the creature's legs, then unleashes a powerful strike, cutting them. The demonic beast screams even louder. Darkus moves toward a tree and yells for the MC to grab the royal horn and get out of there. Lo grabs the creature, and Darkus strikes the huge tree, cutting it so that it starts falling toward the demonic beast. Finally, the tree falls completely on the creature, crushing it. Lo manages to grab the royal horn and get out of the tree's path in time. Eddie comments that the mercenary did very well following orders. He replies that he's used to commanding subordinates, but the archer wants to know whom he's calling a subordinate. Lova watches them talk and soon recalls the evaluators saying that being in the top 10 of the adventurer ranking isn't easy, and that fencing alone wouldn't be enough. He then looks at the fallen creature and concludes that his fencing alone really won't suffice. To climb the adventurer ranks, he knows he'll need to learn more than just swordsmanship. Not long after, Luke arrives where they are, shouting and apologizing to the MC for being late. Looking around, she asks, what on earth happened there? After talking and Lova explaining to them that he thought they were hunters, he makes it clear to Luke that the misunderstanding was resolved in the end. However, she comments that even if it was quickly resolved, attacking so suddenly isn't good. Looking at the two, she emphasizes that she thinks she'll have to reflect that in their ranking. But then she jokes, saying she knew they would have stopped right before it got out of hand. Still, she makes it clear that next time, she will really reflect it in their ranking. Darkus says he understands, and Eddie adds that he'll be more careful next time. Then the mercenary approaches the MC and quietly asks why he's dragging an exclusive evaluator around with him. Loa explains it's because she said it was easier to raise his rank that way. Darkus responds that he knows it's easier to rank up, but in return, he gains a watchdog at the same time. The mercenary also emphasizes that there's no job more inflexible than that of an evaluator, since they're the kind who waste an entire day just going back and forth to a village. Eddie says he doesn't think that will happen, as he believes the MC is just being used for their convenience. Then, he wants to know if Lova knows why evaluators want to become exclusive, since that's how they get promoted. He explains that evaluators get promoted based on the ranker's update logs. In other words, someone like the MC who is climbing the ranks so easily is a perfect ticket. Looking at Luke, he warns Lo to be careful because Luke is just using him as a stepping stone to advance. Lo is intrigued by this and soon remembers her shouting that there was something she absolutely had to do. So he watches her and wonders if advancing is really what she needs to do, since he thinks she doesn't seem like that kind of person. While Luke looks around, she comments that apparently the royal horn beast is safe. Soon, she's surprised to feel the creature gently touching her legs. Lo says it seems the creature likes her. However, Luke says she doesn't think that's it. Rather, the royal horn seems to know that the only safe place is there. Both Eddie and Darkus say that the wolf is ungrateful. Luke gets nervous and points out that the creature is scared because they were acting like idiots. Lo says he didn't do anything wrong, but she makes it clear that he has a scary aura. Then she turns and comments that she's been wondering about something for a while. Looking at the fallen demonic beast on the ground, she says it's a forest fisherman, after all. Darkus explains that it's a demonic beast they've never seen before. Luke crouches and says the creature originally comes from a colder region, which makes sense. But a little worried, she knows that at the same time, the creature hasn't been confirmed in the Azavan forest. She calls out to the MC and says they will record the existence of this beast as well. Then she turns and says they came there for an ecological research request but wants to know what the two of them are doing in the Azavan forest. They feel embarrassed, and Eddie explains that they received a request from the certification department. Luke is intrigued, wondering if there really was a request related to the Azavan forest that involved recruiting a mercenary and an archer, but she soon understands what happened. Looking at the MC, she concludes they were influenced by Lo and accepted an adventurer ranking request. She also thinks Lo should get his head straight. Then Luke takes out her rank cell and tells the MC she has good news. She reveals that his sword speed ranking was updated and that the holy sword style technique he used was incredibly fast. She explains she sent the record and it was approved. Luke shows that he jumped from rank 58 to 26. She emphasizes that above the MC's current rank are mainly masters of quick draw. Then she asks if he's happy. Surprised, he replies that he is happy, but points out that the technique must have been hard to see with the naked eye. He adds that if she managed to see it, she definitely has good eyesight. Luke says it's intuition and that, although it might not seem like it, she is an evaluator and therefore knows a lot. Then she asks why he thinks that is. Lo thinks maybe she seems like an amazing person. Luke lowers her head, smiling, then shouts, asking if he's only realizing that now. Darkus approaches the MC and wants to know which rank he raised. Eddie also says he's curious. Luke asks Lova if she can show them. He agrees and says it's no problem. As she shows Lo's updates, they are shocked, unable to believe the MC's growth. Lo watches them, but soon says he has something to ask. They're surprised, but the MC asks them to teach him about strength beyond the sword. Eddie says he understands now, since the MC has only trained swordsmanship so far. Lo confirms and explains that's why the archer's movements earlier were so useful. Eddie clarifies that even so, he didn't expect Lo to copy his moves instantly. Lo emphasizes that Darkus's instructions were also very helpful. Darkus says that's something that became second nature because of his position as leader of a mercenary guild, having to devise strategies to avoid losing his subordinates. He highlights that when fighting as a team, formation and order are important to decide who is positioned where. You calculate backward from who will deliver the final blow. So, he asks if the MC is really curious about these things, since he knows his sword skill is so powerful that he doesn't need their advice. Lo says no and makes it clear he needs it. Then he asks Darkus to tell him more. Eddie and Darkus look at each other, and while Luke plays with the royal horn beast, the archer tells the MC that when moving through the forest, he first needs to use all 5 senses. Therefore, he's going to give him a tip about teamwork, the first being about the vanguard and rearguard. Luke thinks that, apparently, Loa is trying to change too and is happy to have fought alongside him against the bloody orc. But she looks to the side and sees the huge defeated demonic creature. She thinks the presence of stealthy hunters, along with multiple unconfirmed demonic beasts, raises questions about what is happening, as there are many unknowns in the Azava forest at the moment. Maybe this mission is too much. Meanwhile, someone is observing the MC's group through a surveillance technique. It's Dalkin and Cruel. Cruel wants to know what Dalkin is seeing. Dalkin says that while searching for the unicorn he lost, he found some kids. Cruel likes to hear that and says that anyway, these kids' organs are fresh, so they might fetch a high price. Dalkin has a sinister expression and says it won't be as much as a unicorn, but since they are there, he might as well catch them, knowing that if they've set foot on a beast's territory, it's natural to be devoured. Back where the MC is, Eddie points out that it's not easy to use all 5 senses. He makes it clear to Lo that not only vision and hearing, but also smell and taste need to be trained, and that he needs practice to apply them in a fight. Then he comments that, in that sense, the forest is perfect for training since the aromas of plants and animals are strong. Darkus looks around and says he's not sure. Eddie thinks it will be hard for a mercenary used to the smell of blood, and says that he, Eddie, can accurately sense how many animals are around him at the moment. Then Eddie tells the MC that he's using some prana, explaining that prana can be said to be a kind of fluid, like talent. He asks Loa to concentrate his consciousness on the sense he wants to enhance, believing that this will help him master it. Loa starts concentrating and soon releases his powerful prana. Both are very surprised because it's an incredible amount. While focusing his prana into his consciousness, Loa begins to sharpen his 5 senses, perceiving ahead and going farther and farther until he spots someone on a cliff. The person's appearance is extremely bizarre and strange, which frightens him. So he draws his sword and prepares himself. Luke wants to know what's going on. The MC says someone is watching them, and just after saying he thinks they're nearby, he is startled to see a punch coming full force toward him. With little time to react, he's hit by Dalkin and thrown backward. Eddie and Darkus are shocked, and Luke screams, worried about Loe. The punch was so strong it left a trail of destruction where the MC was thrown. He's lying on the ground. Dalkin, with a bizarre aura, shouts asking who is leaking prana all over the forest since, thanks to that, he was able to locate him easily. The archer and mercenary prepare themselves and shout asking who he is. Luke watches Dalkin carefully and soon shouts, telling Eddie and Darkus not to fight. She then says the man is Dalkin Iris, who ranked 672nd in the adventurer ranking. The two are frightened because they know he's stronger. Dalkin turns to Luke and says she knows him then. She replies that of course, since he has quite a career. Luke also comments that she knows that just before reaching the top 2 digits, he was an idiot who committed a crime and fell in rank. Cruel appears shortly after, very tired, telling Dalkin he's too fast. Dalkin replies that Cruel is slow. The old man is surprised to see an evaluator there, and even more surprised to hear her call him. Luke says she knows he's ranked 76th among smugglers. He laughs and comments that she is quite experienced, as he wouldn't have imagined she knew his crime ranking. The crime ranking is a hierarchy of criminals, a list that shows the severity of crimes committed by an individual. Famous examples include the assassin ranking and the robbery ranking. The higher the rank, the more proof that they are deeply addicted to crime. The crime ranking is one of those unofficial rankings. In the world, there are also rankings created by users, not just by the certification department. Sometimes, high-quality rankings are purchased by the evaluation department, but not those that violate ethical standards. Unofficial rankings are maintained and updated by enthusiasts. Dalkin looks to the side and sees the royal horn he had lost right there. Then, with a bizarre expression, he shouts that he had been looking for the creature all along. However, Luke quickly steps in front and yells, wanting to know why Dalkin is working with Rosso Cruel. He replies that it's simply for the money. Very indignant, Luke shouts asking if he really joined a guy like that just for money, since with his skills, he could earn honorably. Dalkin asks her not to jump to conclusions and says that what he wants is not just money. He then explains there are 2 reasons he teamed up with Rosso Cruel. The first is to sell goods to him and buy goods from him. Luke is intrigued by this, but Dalkin releases his power and asks if she knew it's possible to buy rankings if you really want. She is startled but soon furious, demanding to know how he dares insult rankings in front of an evaluator. Taking advantage of Dalkin's distraction, Darkus quickly strikes with his sword at the adventurer's neck. But with incredible speed, Dalkin dodges the attack and blocks it with his hand. Meanwhile, Eddie, preparing an arrow, comments that the request they received was to patrol the Azavan forest and that a dangerous individual like him cannot simply be ignored. Dalkin takes a deep breath, and furious, releases intense prana. He then easily breaks Darkus's sword, who is shocked and can't believe it was destroyed so easily with bare hands. Dalkin quickly turns and prepares a punch. Darkus freezes, totally scared, thinking he won't be able to dodge the blow. But before Dalkin throws his punch, another intense prana energy rushes toward him. Lova appears at the last second and blocks Dalkin's punch, who in turn asks who the hell the MC is. Lao makes it clear that it's his turn to speak. Their intense prana energies clash, visible from far away. Then, because of the impact of their attacks, they are both thrown backward. Lo and Dalkin take their distance. Luke quickly asks if the MC is okay. He replies yes, but wants to know if the guy in front of him is a hunter. She remembers him saying he was looking for the royal horn and says yes. Without hesitation, Lova prepares his attack and then unleashes his wind whirlwind technique, hitting Dalkin squarely. But he resists the technique and shouts, wondering how a kid like the MC can use prana. Lova becomes worried, thinking Dalkin is a strong guy, since his attack barely had any effect. He then recalls the training he had with Adol when they were climbing a mountain, and Adol warned him to be careful when meeting someone who deals with prana. Adol emphasized that the MC was a special case, and that normally, to obtain prana, one must become a master at something. Lo was confused at the time and asked what that meant. The knight explained it could be a sword, a weapon, anything. People awaken hidden power through deep research to the point of losing their minds, and that is what prana means. After saying that, Adol began to release his prana and quickly climbed the mountain with ease. Once at the top, he explained that, in other words, being aware of prana usually means the person is a master of something. Remembering this, Love prepares himself once again. Then Luke shouts, warning the MC to be careful, as Dalkin is 12th in the boxer ranking. Lo becomes worried, but Luke continues, saying that, besides that, Dalkin is also 48th in animal taming and 19th in grip strength. Quite frightened, she shouts that Dalkin is also 7th in the weightlifting ranking. Panicked, Luke says Dalkin has world-class level power and that the MC should stay far away from him. Dalkin starts walking toward her and comments that to talk about someone else's information like she's doing, she must find being an evaluator very annoying at moments like this. Then he grabs a tree and makes it clear he will crush it first. Easily, he pulls the tree out of the ground as if it were nothing. Luke is terrified, unable to believe what she got herself into. Dalkin holds the tree and immediately throws it, aiming full force at Luke. Lo quickly appears, blocking the massive tree with his prana, but because of the attack's force, he is thrown against another tree, although he managed to deflect Dalkin's attack's trajectory. Luke looks back and screams, worried about the MC. He tries to stay on his feet, which catches Rosso Cruel's attention. Then Rosso comments that the MC's prana is really strange. He calls Dalkin and asks him to take the boy, as he's sure he can get a good price for him. Dalkin laughs and replies that if the old man says so, it must be true. Then, making a bizarre face, he shouts that he will capture Lo as planned. At that moment, from the top of a tree, Eddie makes it clear it would be a problem if Dalkin forgot about them. Saying that, he fires his triple arrow attack, but without much trouble. Dalkin simply stops his arm, surrounded by prana, and breaks all the arrows. Then he turns and wants to know if the archer is at least worth the effort. Eddie is very scared by the adventurer's strength. Then Darkus takes advantage of everyone being distracted and throws an item in their direction. A smoke explosion happens, so he shouts, asking them to push Dalkin back. Dalkin becomes extremely furious, and, while shouting for them not to mock him, prepares his powerful punch. He then slams the ground, completely dispersing the smoke due to the huge impact. Not only that, his powerful strike breaks all the ground around. The tremor and explosion echo throughout the forest. But soon, Dalkin looks confused, as it seems they all escaped. Cruel makes it clear to Dalkin that what he did was very dangerous. Then, looking around and seeing the huge damage, he wants to know what he would have done if the boy had died. Meanwhile, they are running at full speed. Darkus says Eddie did very well to notice his intention. The archer replies that Dalkin is not an opponent anyone can defeat alone. Then he makes it clear it was good that they all decided to escape. Lova, while running with the royal horn in his arms, keeps thinking about Dalkin. He reflects that, so this is how a high-ranked adventurer is. Somewhat nervous, He holds the creature tightly, making it jump. Then it growls at the MC, who feels embarrassed and apologizes. Luke gets down from Darkus's back and comments that since they got there, she thinks they should be fine. Then she calls the MC and says there is one more thing they'll have to do. She makes it clear that Lova must make sure to capture Rosso Cruel. Lo thinks about that name and then asks if it's the bearded man who was with Dalkin. Luke replies that it is. The MC then wants to know why they have to catch him. Luke gets a bit embarrassed, but says it's because of his goal, which surprises Loa. But Darkus approaches, saying he doesn't know what she's talking about, but asks if it's not more important to decide what they will do now. Luke lowers her head, replies yes, apologizes to the MC, and says she was in too much of a hurry. Darkus emphasizes that, as he said before, their task is to patrol the Azavan forest, and that they will continue monitoring Rosso Cruel and Dalkin. Luke becomes serious and swears as an evaluator that the two cannot defeat them. Darkus replies that he knows, and stresses that this is precisely why they will only monitor them, discovering their actions, and then reporting them to the evaluation department, leaving the rest to them. He also acknowledges that it's still dangerous, but that's exactly why they are doing it. He then mentions that he is ranked in the 6,000th place in the adventurer ranking, along with Eddie, and wants to know what happens if they actually manage to defeat them. Luke takes a deep breath and makes it clear that he is hopeless. She emphasizes that, given their opponents are far superior in stealth and tracking, and considering the forest is ranked 48th as a danger zone, she believes it will depend on the credibility of the information, but she thinks both will rise at least 1,000 positions. This excites both Eddie and Darkus. Luke pleads for the two not to do anything reckless. Darkus makes it clear that he already said they will avoid combat because they have no intention of being reckless, but wants to know what she and the MC will do. Luke looks at him, and Love replies that he wants to take the royal horn to a safe place. Darkus comments that he also thinks it's a good idea, since at the same time, he believes it would be difficult to fight while carrying and worrying about the creature. Eddie stresses that since Dalkin and Rosso Cruel are after the royal horn, there's a risk of being attacked if they stay with the creature. However, Lova makes it clear that it's not about that. He explains that he doesn't want to involve the creature anymore. Luke, while petting the royal horn, agrees with the MC and points out that she thinks the creature must have been very frightened because of them. Then Darkus comments that from then on, they will have to act separately. He points to a huge tree and explains that after evacuating the royal horn, they will meet under the tall tree where Eddie will be every night. Love asks what they will do when they meet. The mercenary clarifies it's just for safety, as they might need each other's help. Eddie approaches Lo and emphasizes that before they split up, he will teach him how to move in the forest. Darkus looks worried and soon warns the archer that if he's careless, Dalkin could find him. Eddie states that if he wants, he can go ahead, as he's confident he can find him wherever he is. While the archer talks quietly with the MC, Darkus just watches with a stern face. He then comments that he will also teach Lo a bit more about strategy. Eddie turns around and asks if the mercenary isn't in a hurry, but he tells Eddie to shut up, as he will only teach the MC a little and then get out of there. After some time, Eddie shows the MC how it's done, as does Darkus, who talks about strategies. After finishing teaching Lo, he thanks both and says he learned a lot. Darkus comments that it's not exactly a teaching fee, but asks if the MC could lend him his dagger since his sword is broken. Lo emphasizes that it's just a hunting blade, but if the mercenary thinks it's okay, he has no problem giving it. Before leaving, Darkus asks the MC to do some image training before sleeping, as he's sure it will greatly increase his success rate. Eddie stresses that Lo should review it once a day. The MC replies he understands and thanks both again. Luke stands up and comments that now they will take the royal horn to a safe place and thinks they can also resume the ecological research request. Luke explains she's still worried about Dalkin, but knows they have the responsibility to complete the mission. She then gets very close to the MC and asks if he can understand what she means. Love answers yes. Luke gets even closer and asks if he really understands. A bit embarrassed, he replies that he does. Then she says that she trusts Eddie and Darkus and is sure that these two will do well, and overall, she even thinks they might be superior. Luke comments that indeed there is something surprising about their abilities, and thinks she can even trust what the MC is saying. Taking advantage of this conversation, she has a suggestion to make. She asks if the MC agrees to look for the royal horn's home while conducting the ecological research. She then explains that she got curious about where this creature came from in the first place, since there might be others of its kind there, and if it seems safe, they could leave it there. Lo asks how they will find this out. Luke says they can simply ask. Then she crouches down and asks the royal horn where it wants to go. Quickly, the creature runs into the middle of the forest. Luke comments that she thinks this will be how it goes. While running after the royal horn, Lova wonders if this will really work. She replies that they will have to trust the creature's homing instincts, since royal horns are quite intelligent. She adds that the creature was terrified and, if young, it's natural for it to want to return home. Lova says he understands and that for now, they just have to follow it. The royal horn stops under a tree, and Luke points upward, shouting that it's another unidentified magical beast. Then she turns and shouts for the MC to register it. Lo draws the shape of the creature he saw on paper and wonders if it's accurate. Then Luke shouts and points to another creature. They continue doing this all afternoon, and soon night falls. They have to stop and make a campfire. The royal horn lies down beside the fire and sleeps. The MC, however, stays awake. He breathes deeply and concentrates, then begins to release his prana. At that moment, Luke approaches and interrupts him. He looks at her and asks if something happened. She asks if she interrupted him. Lo says no and explains he was just reviewing what he learned from Eddie. Luke takes the record of magical creatures the MC was noting and says she was checking the research report he wrote. She points out that if they consider his lack of drawing skills for a future task, for now, she has to give him only a provisional grade, because his writing should be more concise and objective. But she is interrupted, and Lo comments that she had said the reason she wants to catch Cruel is because of her objective. So he asks if this objective is the thing she mentioned before that she absolutely must do. Slightly embarrassed, she says yes. Lo says he will help her, and makes it clear that if she stays up late like this, it seems like if she stays still, everything she's holding will explode. Then he turns and emphasizes that he understands that feeling very well. Luke shouts, asking how he knows it so well and how he can say that so casually. But she quickly stops shouting and asks if that's why Lo trained late every night. He answers yes, which makes Luke embarrassed for having shouted at him. She then thanks him and says that even so, he doesn't know her objective. The MC replies that he can help her even if he doesn't know, but Luke shouts that she will tell him what her objective is. She explains that a ranking is a record of outstanding people in order from the top. That's why people compete and aim for the top of the ranking, since having their name on it is proof of honor and value to everyone. Then she asks, what if there was the opposite? What if, in their world, there was a ranking that recorded people in order from the bottom? She then talks about the worst ranking, saying that this is the dark side of rankings that is pursuing her. Lo is surprised to learn what her objective is. Then Luke tells that 5 years ago she had a close friend, a girl named Morella. She had been blind since birth and didn't know the world, so she never laughed at Luke's dream. Back then, Morella said Luke was amazing and told her she aimed to become an evaluator. Luke, all excited, emphasized that her dream was to become an evaluator and update the top 1 ranking because she knew there would be no greater honor than to record, with her own hands, the great ones who would leave their mark on history. However, she pointed out that some other children kept saying she would never make it, and Morella was the only one who believed in her. Morella, in turn, stressed that maybe the school was too small for Luke. She told her that her father had said the day before that their family had been invited on a liner cruise, which would have many attractions. Luke got excited. She said it was a recently built ocean liner. Morella, a little embarrassed, said her father had also gotten the invitation through a relative and that she didn't know much about the ship. So, if it was all right with Luke, she wanted to give her the ticket. Very surprised, Luke wanted to know why. Morella replied that it was simple. She couldn't see anything. Luke tried to hold back, but couldn't, and shouted no, making it clear that if she went on the cruise, she wanted Morella to come with her. She then took her hand and emphasized that she would hold it the entire time. Morella was very happy and thanked Luke. Luke says that after that, Morella's mother gave up her own ticket and the two were able to go on the cruise together. For Luke, who couldn't fit in at school because of her big dreams, Morella was her only friend. The same was true for Morella, who couldn't see, and both she and her family were very grateful to Luke. However, 2 days later, tragedy struck. Due to engine problems, the ship ran aground and began to sink quickly. One of the sailors informed the captain that more than half of the lifeboats were not working due to the impact, and that he feared that to evacuate all passengers with the remaining boats, 3 round trips would be needed. The captain told the sailor to gather the passengers on deck. Then he turned away and made it clear to himself that he would decide which passengers would board the boats. He placed his hand on a folder and thought he had no choice but to use it. Once everyone had gathered on deck, the captain announced he would call the names of the passengers who would board the first boat. Those called should board the lifeboat immediately. Luke turned to Morella and asked her not to be scared, saying everything would be fine because she was there with her. The captain began shouting the names of the first passenger. Luke became very scared when her own name was called. She then wondered why only her name had been mentioned. Morella took a deep breath and shouted to her friend that she was fine and asked Luke to go first. Luke tried to argue, but Morella kept shouting that there was no time, because they wouldn't survive unless everyone cooperated. She then made it clear that she believed Luke would become an evaluator and wanted Luke to believe in her too. Fighting back tears, Luke said, "All right," and that she would wait for her friend. The lifeboat that reached the shore returned immediately to the ship, but Morella was not on the lifeboat that came back. On the third rescue attempt, it was already too late. The ship caught fire and sank. Completely devastated, Luke fell to her knees, thinking it was impossible. She overheard some sailors talking among themselves and wondered why those in the worst ranking were pushed down. Then, furious, she went to the sailors and demanded to know what they meant by worst ranking. They asked if she had been listening to their conversation. Luke clenched her fist tightly and said that from their reaction, it seemed they didn't want others to know. With a threatening expression, she made it clear that if they didn't explain, she would tell everyone there about the worst ranking. One of the sailors comments that he thinks he won't have a choice, but asks Luke not to tell the captain. After hearing the explanation, Luke says she will tell the MC what she heard back then. She explains that the worst ranking is a classification that lists human beings in order of their lowest abilities. Humans who are socially, economically, physically, and mentally inferior are ranked so they can be quickly identified, allowing this classification to be used. She then asks if the MC understands. Lo says that deciding who to discard is something unforgivable. Luke agrees and adds that many of the people in the worst ranking hold positions responsible for human life. Captains of luxury ocean liners, directors of large hospitals, politicians, and others. They use this ranking to prioritize lives. Thus, Luke stresses that her goal is to eliminate the worst ranking from this world, and that she will never forgive the system that killed her friend, as it drives people to despair and therefore should not exist. Lo says he understands the worst ranking, but wants to know how this is related to Rosso Cruel. Luke explains that, in other words, it takes a criminal to catch a criminal. The worst ranking is an unofficial ranking, just like the criminal ranking in which Rosso Cruel is listed. If they can capture Cruel and question him about unofficial classifications, Luke believes she may be able to get closer to the mastermind behind the worst ranking. But to do that, Luke wants to deal with Dalkin in some way. Lo asks if she has any idea who the mastermind is. Luke answers that she doesn't, but she knows that since they've attracted politicians and the wealthy, they seem to be a large-scale organization. She also thinks there might be something like an underground certification department, but stresses that it's only her guess. After she says this, silence falls over the place. Lo comments that he thinks it must have been hard for her to carry that burden alone all this time, and that it must have been painful, but even so, she never stopped. Therefore, he makes it clear to Luke that he respects her greatly. Luke is surprised, lowers her head, and tells the MC to stop saying those things because if he keeps it up, she's going to start crying. Lova simply watches and smiles. A little embarrassed, Luke says it's not fair that she's the only one crying, so she asks Lova to tell her his goal as well. He's surprised but says all right and that he'll tell her, making it clear he won't cry. But Luke replies, no, she'll make him cry, and she'll even let him cry in her arms. Time passes, and morning comes. Luke wakes up crying, and Lova asks if she's still crying. She says she didn't know he was going through something so difficult, and that even if she cried all night, the tears wouldn't stop. She then emphasizes that she now understands why he was in such a hurry, because he wants to go to the island of the gods and check if everyone is still safe. Lo says he's learned that he can't get there just by being impatient, and that it was she who taught him that. He then makes it clear that from that moment on, if anything is missing, she should not hesitate to tell him. Intrigued, Luke wants to know what that means. Lova extends his hand and asks her to officially be his exclusive evaluator. Luke starts crying, puts on her hat, and, overjoyed, says yes, promising she will never make him regret it. Thus, they shake hands and seal the deal. After walking through the forest for a while, Luke comments that they've gone a fair distance. Then she turns and says she hopes the creature can find its way home safely. Lo wants to know what kind of region royal horns live in. Luke says they mainly live in caves, and since their life force is strong, they rarely need to attack others. Because of this, they usually live quietly inside caves. At that moment, the royal horn notices something and suddenly runs off at full speed, barking. Luke and Lova run after the creature, and Luke says it must be around there, and that they can't lose sight of the royal horn until the creature stops. And Luke and the MC are surprised, for they are standing before a huge rock. Lo wants to know if it's really just a big rock. Luke says no, and quickly runs around it. She then says it's a Muse Mimic, and that she would never have thought such a rare magical beast would be there in the Azavan forest. Lo comments that, apparently, the beast is dead. Luke replies that she understands and thinks that solves everything. The MC is confused and wants to know what she means. Luke asks if, by any chance, he knows what a mimic is, explaining that they are magical beasts that lure and eat humans using a treasure. She then explains that the Muse Mimic uses magical beasts instead of treasure. The creature places rare magical beasts on the victim's body to attract poachers, and the Muse Mimic's beasts live in symbiosis, devouring the poachers together. She concludes that it's also known as a moving museum, and believes the creature must have traveled to many places collecting different magical beasts. Lo wants to know if the royal horn was also there. Luke answers yes, and says that when a Muse Mimic hunts something, it attacks the poachers by releasing all the magical beasts from its body at once. But she thinks this time the creature was counterattacked. The MC quickly thinks of Dalkin and says he believes it was him. After observing the creature in full, Luke says that with this, the ecological research is complete, and that the reason for the mass outbreak of magical beasts in the Azavan forest was the fact that the Muse Mimic and all its magical beasts were released at the same time, disrupting the ecosystem. Therefore, she thinks a report like the one she made should be enough. Lo looks at the creature and says it's quite horrible, but he wants to know if the wounds he's seeing were also made by poachers. Luke says no, and explains that she thinks this was probably done after the creature died, as it looks like it was eaten by another magical beast. She then emphasizes that the Muse Mimic forms a strong bond with the magical beasts it lives with, so whoever made those injuries is a magical beast that was already in the forest. At that moment, the royal horn approaches the creature and begins rubbing against it. Lo says that it seems the royal horn also lost its home, and that he knows that feeling well, almost as if the heart is being torn apart. Luke is very saddened to hear that from her friend, but then a loud noise occurs, and as soon as they turn around, they see that a large, bloody orc has appeared near them. Luke shouts that it's the orc they saw earlier. The creature becomes furious and immediately strikes a powerful blow to the ground, forcing the MC to grab everyone and leap away at the last second. As soon as he sets them down safely, he keeps his eyes on the orc in front of him. The creature turns and begins devouring the magical beast. Luke then realizes that it was the orc who caused those wounds on the Muse Mimic. Quickly, the royal horn runs toward the orc and leaps to attack it, but the terrible orc turns quickly and lands a powerful blow on the wolf, slamming it hard to the ground. The royal horn tries to stand but trembles all over from the hit it took. However, Lo steps in front and tells the royal horn to stay put. Then he draws his sword and makes it clear that he will defeat the orc. He then begins to recall when he told the archer about his technique, and the archer wanted to know if the MC was saying there was a technique he wanted to use but kept failing to execute. Thus, Lo explained that he didn't know much about the sword, but wanted to know if he used prana while executing the technique. Lov replied yes, and said he thought he was failing to control his prana. Eddie then said that his case was simple, and that he would teach him the prana control method passed down in the Markman family. He also said he believed the MC could master it in a short time. After remembering this, Lov closes his eyes and begins to focus. It doesn't take long before he opens them again, but this time with a gaze overflowing with power. Then, again, Lo begins to remember the conversation he had with the archer and asked Eddie to be clearer. The archer replied that the MC already knew how to enhance the 5 senses, because the next step was to use those senses to look inside himself. Lo, still confused by the explanation, comments that he did not understand where Eddie was going with this. The archer explains that it is as if he were looking from above, observing himself from the top of his own head, but makes it clear that he will know what he is trying to say when he tries, and will see something interesting, especially for someone like him, who is overflowing with prana, being extremely effective. After remembering this, Lova intensifies his prana even more, and thinks that he is feeling his senses heightened. With that, something begins to happen with the MC's prana, and a kind of eye is formed above him. Thus, he ends up understanding what the archer had explained, because he is able to see himself from the top of his own head, but soon realizes that the movement of his own prana is a tremendous mess. After focusing even more, he thinks he understood, and then opens his eyes, emanating intense power. He focuses on the orc in front of him, which quickly turns around when it feels the tremendous power on its back. Lova prepares his attack, and as soon as the terrible orc comes at him, he applies his lotus flower technique, hitting the huge creature head-on. Luke is very impressed to see that it is the second technique of her friend that used to always fail. While continuing his attack, Lo thinks that the lotus flower is not a single attack, so he applies another blow and, while preparing again, he thinks that he knows the lotus flower is a technique that builds stacks. Thus, he strikes again, and then once more. The orc continues to be attacked without being able to defend itself. Lo sheaths his sword and soon turns around as an explosion happens on his target. Luke is left open-mouthed, unable to believe what she just witnessed. Lova goes to the royal horn, crouches down, and asks the creature not to be afraid, because he is not its enemy. The royal horn soon begins to lick the MC's hand, and as the creature places its paw on Lo's hand, Luke just watches without saying anything. However, she begins to think that, at this rate, she had better continue traveling with the royal horn, because she knows that the forest of Azavan is still dangerous, but at the same time, she would also like to know how the others are doing. Meanwhile, in another part of the forest, Dalkin is doing something with one of the royal horns he has in his custody. After removing the creature's horn, he wants to know if the royal horn is not going to stay still, because he thinks he might not cut it correctly. Then he turns and asks Rosso Cruel if it will be okay to damage the creature just a little. He replies that Dalkin cannot do that, otherwise the price will drop drastically. Dalkin wants to know why, since he knows that Rosso Cruel grinds the creature's horn into powder in the end. Cruel emphasizes that if it is in powder form from the start, they will suspect it is fake. However, the two do not realize they are being watched by someone. At the top of a tree are Eddie and Darkus, who soon comments that he is holding himself back from doing something stupid because the sight he is seeing is truly disgusting. The archer agrees with the mercenary but stresses that, for now, they only need to observe, since the opponent is someone they cannot defeat. Darkus replies that he knows that very well, and that they will have no choice but to report them to the certification department. Rosso Cruel comments that it seems they will gather most of the merchants. Dalkin agrees and says that it is time. Then he turns, looks up, and makes it clear that he will first deal with the two up in the tree who are spying. Eddie and Darkus are terribly frightened when they realize that Dalkin knew about them the whole time. Quickly, he moves close to the tree where they are, and, without much difficulty, lands a powerful punch, completely breaking the tree and forcing them to come down. The mercenary and the archer take their distance. Eddie comments that he was hiding his presence and wants to know when Dalkin noticed. He replies that it was from the beginning and says he knew they were hunting magical beasts on the way there. However, he points out that they are also looking for goods, and that it is normal to be aware of the presence of all the magical beasts in the region. Eddie is startled and thinks that this is what a 3-digit ranked adventurer is like, and that Dalkin is not just brute force. Quickly, Darkus throws his smoke bomb, but this time, with his incredible speed, Dalkin manages to catch it. And while he was about to go after the mercenary to try to use the same trick, Eddie hits the smoke bomb directly with an arrow, creating an explosion that the two immediately take advantage of to escape. As they keep running, Darkus says he cannot escape as fast as the archer, and therefore wants to know what he should do. Eddie has an idea, and while grabbing a leaf, says he has to increase their chances of survival, even if only a little. That said, he runs his hand over the cut on his face and rubs the blood on the leaf he picked up. Then, he places it on one of his arrows and fires it into the air. Next, the archer says he has done everything that could be done, and that, for now, all that remains is to wait for the outcome. Thus, the two turn and see Dalkin right in front of them, wanting to know if the little boys could not go any further. However, he starts shouting that it would not make any difference in the end, because he knows the forest there like the palm of his hand. Darkus asks the archer not to get in his way, and Eddie says that an archer can only show his true skills when he has cover, and that Darkus is completely mistaken if he thinks this is the same test from the exam. Darkus draws his sword and comments that it is a coincidence, because he is also different from when he was during the exam, since team battles are his specialty, and that it is easy to perform well when he has subordinates. Eddie makes it clear that he will not follow the mercenary's orders this time. He replies that it is fine, and asks that he just not get in his way. Then the two release their intense pranas and prepare for the confrontation. Meanwhile, where the MC is, he feels something strange, and looking up, he thinks he sensed a bizarre energy and questions if it is just his imagination. Luke calls for him and wants to know what they will do about the royal horn from now on, because now that they have reached this point, she thinks it is better to protect the creature and then take it to the recognition department. Lo comments that that man does not stay quiet, and that to leave the forest with the royal horn, they will have no choice but to defeat Dalkin. Luke gets thoughtful for a brief moment and soon says that there are exactly 2 methods that come to her mind at the moment, in which the first is to wait for Owl to show up at the recognition department and for reinforcements to arrive. But since the opponent is Dalkin, if someone like Mr. Loud is on standby, he would run quickly, but otherwise it would take time to organize. Lo makes it clear that when it comes to dealing with prana, Dalkin is much better, and that he has no confidence to keep running from that perception. Therefore, Luke says that the other method is very simple, which leaves the MC a little surprised. Meanwhile, Dalkin is releasing his intense power and ends up surprised, then asks Darkus and Eddie if they can also use prana. The mercenary thinks that to be more precise, it is not that they can simply use prana, but that they became capable, since he has in mind that people awaken prana by mastering a specific field, but without a trigger, they cannot awaken. He knows he perfected his sense of team battle through mercenary work, and that he is also skilled at calculating the enemy's strength and has not suffered in recent years. Eddie thinks that he was a genius archer born of bloodline, and that due to the influence of his prestigious family, no one challenged him either. And unfortunately, both did not know defeat. But fortunately, they recently encountered an irregular user of prana called Lo Tuli, and it was enough to awaken them. Therefore, the mercenary charges at his opponent, who dodges the attack and counterattacks with a powerful punch. But Darkus manages to block and tries to strike a counterblow, but ends up having his attack blocked. Super focused on the battle, he thinks he can see the immense power of his opponent's prana. While the mercenary is fighting a close-range battle, the archer stays from afar and thinks that he could use the forest to his advantage, but that this is the first time he can see colors, and that at the moment he can shoot arrows with even more precision. Therefore, he fires his precise arrow that goes straight toward Dalkin's back, who as soon as he notices the arrow quickly approaching, thinks that the archer is insolent because he is aiming where he is dodging, but he releases his powerful prana and blocks the arrow, which just falls to the ground as if it were nothing. But he soon notices a smoke bomb coming his way, and is once again surprised by an explosion and gets surrounded by smoke, but wastes no time and gets out of it, ending up surprised by an arrow that grazes his stomach, then looks up and sees the archer at the top of the tree. Dalkin considers that apparently that Archer Kid can aim wherever he goes, and that he even climbed to the top of the tree simultaneously with the smoke bomb, and as soon as he realizes Darkus is attacking him, he dodges and thinks that when an archer shares the position, the swordsman endlessly pursues, and therefore their coordination precision is high. Then he realizes that the guy in front of him is the brain behind it all, and also notices that he is sending hand signals, and thinks that if he has time, he can figure it out, but knows that Darkus is good at bluffing. Therefore, he takes distance and comments that he will give up, because the negotiation with the magical beasts has many annoying aspects, and that it is a waste to use resistance against them, and that is why he was just dealing with them casually. That said, he raises his hand, and releasing even more of his power, makes it clear that it is not a difference that can be resolved by using their heads. Darkus does not want to know, and charges to attack, and yells asking not to underestimate them. Eddie at the same time fires his arrow, and Dalkin, close to being hit by the double attack, just stays in his position, then delivers a punch that blocks the arrow and stops Darkus's dagger. Then he crouches, thinking that his grip speed is 48th in the ranking. The mercenary gets very worried since his weapon is grabbed by the opponent, who easily applies his grip strength and breaks it, leaving the mercenary unable to believe what he is seeing. Dalkin wastes no time and delivers a powerful kick to the mercenary, throwing him hard against a huge tree. Darkus screams in pain from the impact he suffered, and Eddie shouts worried for him, but soon gets scared because Dalkin has already ripped out a tree and is knocking him off it. The mercenary tries to shout for Eddie, and Dalkin notices this, and comments that apparently the mercenary is still clinging to life, but says he thinks his organs are a mess, and that therefore he will not be able to sell them anyway. Then he decides he will simply eliminate him and prepares his punch. However, an attack comes at high speed and hits Dalkin's arm directly, leaving him not understanding where the attack came from. Someone arrives thanking Darkus for the message in the arrow, because thanks to it, he could arrive without being late, and almost without strength on the ground. He thinks of the archer who did this, and asks the person who just arrived to tell Eddie that. Dalkin is surprised to see who it is. It is the MC, who says that in the end, he chose the simple method, which is to defeat him. Therefore, the battle between Lo Tuli and Dalkin Iris will happen. Meanwhile, in another part of the forest, Rosso Cruel is thinking that Dalkin is late, so he believes that he is certainly not fighting mere children because he has in mind that if there is an unpredictable variable, it is the MC because of his prana, so he just keeps laughing. Back to the battle of the two. Both prepare and Dalkin goes straight for the MC and starts throwing several punches. Love stays focused and tries to block all of them, then quickly goes up to a tree and uses his lunar slash. Dalkin blocks the attack, but Lo takes advantage of him being distracted and charges with everything. But the boxer does not stand still and delivers a counter-strike against the MC's attack, creating a strong release of power due to the impact. Dalkin comments that the MC's movements have improved a little. He does not answer anything, but Dalkin emphasizes that it was only a little. Then he releases his thunderous power and makes it clear that Lova is still no match. The MC is shocked to feel such power, but ends up not noticing his opponent about to hit him. With that, he takes a powerful kick that throws him far away. Lo tries to stand, and as soon as he hits the ground, he tries to break, but Dalkin gives no opening and is already about to deliver another punch. However, Lo manages to dodge. Dalkin grabs a tree, rips it out, and while throwing it at the MC, shouts saying that he cannot simply win. Lo quickly ducks to avoid being hit, but Dalkin is again on top, ready to deliver another strike. The MC prepares himself, and while watching his opponent about to throw the punch, he thinks about his ranking and knows that he has already fought stronger opponents before. Then remembers the battle he had with Mr. Lud, and in the face of Dalkin's powerful blow, the MC thinks he cannot be afraid. Therefore, he releases his powerful prana, which ends up scaring Dalkin. Lo prepares his attack and delivers a slash at his opponent. Dalkin thinks that the MC used a prana-based feint and that the brat is copying his technique, but Lo makes it clear that this is not even worthy of being called a technique. Dalkin charges forward and yells asking the boy not to say nonsense. Lo dodges the punch and thinks that there is no need to fight head-on against a stronger opponent, then starts remembering when Darkus commented that many misunderstand, but that tactics are not about creativity, because they differ depending on the knowledge the person has and the patterns they memorized. Then he made it clear that the basis of tactics is to guarantee numerical advantage, and that he would teach the MC some simple patterns to do this. And after explaining, he wanted to know if the MC understood, because tactics are about how to create the situation he just explained. Therefore, while the MC dodges his opponent's attack, he thinks that first, ambush attacks through teamwork, and as soon as he strikes his counterattack, he thinks that second, he needs to lure the enemy into his territory. And after taking distance and seeing Darkus going after Dalkin, he thinks that third, a coordinated attack with a hidden unit. But the boxer quickly turns and yells, wanting to know how the mercenary can still move. Darkus laughs, and seeing the signal in the MC's hand, he thinks that he is making him work hard. So he grabs the boxer with all his strength, and the MC takes advantage of this and charges forward. Dalkin goes crazy with rage and stomps hard on the ground, throwing the MC and the mercenary away, and with his incredible speed goes after Lo. But while doing so, he is in the archer's sights, and an arrow is shot and hits the boxer right in the eye, who starts screaming as soon as he pulls the arrow out. From afar, Eddie laughs at seeing that he managed to land a good shot. Lo takes his chance and delivers a strong attack on the boxer. He screams in pain from the strike, but stomps firmly on the ground, which leaves the MC unable to believe that his opponent still has strength. Dalkin yells, releasing his thunderous prana, and charges at Lo, and lands a tremendous punch that throws him upward. The MC managed to defend with his sword at the last moment. Dalkin yells that he is impressed to have his blow blocked by a brat, but makes it clear that it is over, and while preparing his other punch, emphasizes that he will eliminate the MC as soon as he returns to the ground. From above, Lova hears the boxer shouting that he deserves praise, because lasting so long is impressive for a little adventurer. But Dalkin emphasizes that this time the MC has no companions to rely on. Taken by fury, Dalkin yells that the MC will simply die in silence. Lova gets worried, but something moves quickly. It is Luke who arrives and yells, asking Dalkin to wait. While he is confused by Luke's request, he does not notice the royal horn approaching and gets hit in the back by it. Dalkin steps back furious and sees that it was the creature he was hunting before. Luke yells, calling the MC, and asks him to finish Dalkin. While falling, Lova prepares his powerful sword attack and delivers multiple crescent moon strikes. Dalkin starts getting hit by them and thinks that apparently the cuts will not stop. And as he starts being pushed back, he realizes that the attacks are getting heavier. Lo takes advantage of the boxer being busy blocking his strikes and prepares another technique. And as he gets closer, he unleashes his blooming lotus and a huge explosion happens. Dalkin is thrown back and falls hard to the ground. Luke runs to her friend to see how he is. She gets terrified seeing the injuries on his body, but still gets excited and yells, saying that he was incredible and that he finally defeated Dalkin. Lova says he just thinks he knocked him out for a while, but Dalkin gets up furious and with a bizarre expression makes it clear to the MC that he will eliminate him for sure, then grabs his head and lifts him off the ground. Luke screams, asking Dalkin to let go of her friend, but the boxer turns with a devastating look that fills Luke and the royal horn with fear. She falls to the ground and calls the boxer a monster. While straining, Dalkin thinks that he cannot crush the brat's head because he is out of strength. Then Lo manages to break free from his opponent and steps back. Dalkin starts breathing heavily and soon begins to remember an old moment in his life when he was wondering how long the brats in front of him would rest. One of them had said that there was no need to hurry, and the other emphasized that Dalkin had a lot of stamina. The blonde kid then commented that, as already said, to increase the ranking from then on, they would need to be cooperative. The girl, in turn, made it clear to Dalkin that he also had to consider their pace. After remembering this, he starts going toward the MC and comments that they are both pathetic, then grabs his neck again and makes it clear that he will strangle him to death right there. Lova starts having trouble breathing, and while grabbing the boxer's arm, he thinks that he cannot die in a place like that. Then he remembers his friend Yuna and concludes that he really cannot die. He starts remembering the dream he had of his mother, and a strong light begins to appear, which leaves the boxer very confused. The MC's body begins to release an even more powerful prana. The power becomes even more intense, and Lo begins to feel the gentle wind and the scattered clouds. Then remembers before, when he was in his village, the water shaping and touching the earth, and that in that sacred light he saw eternity. Therefore, he grabs the boxer's arm tightly and thinks that he needs to look straight ahead with his own eyes. Taken by the power of his prana, he knows that in these precious days he will never fall. The boxer starts getting scared and soon has his arm completely crushed. Then he starts screaming in pain and calls the MC an insolent brat and wants to know what he did. With the secret art of the Thule tribe released, the MC thinks that with this new power, he can reach the heavens. Luke watches her friend and soon wants to know what exactly it is, because she knows it is completely different from other techniques. However, the boxer does not care and charges, but as soon as he throws a punch, he notices that it is completely blocked by the powerful aura surrounding the MC, and he cannot believe it, since just by touching the aura, he ends up losing his other fist. Then he jumps back and becomes even more terrified. Lo prepares his attack, and as soon as he unleashes it, he makes it clear to the boxer that he lost. Dalkin starts screaming and thinking that rankings really are crap, then remembers before, when a guy was saying that to rise higher in the adventurer ranking, he would need results in teamwork, and that 4 years ago he had reached a very bad ranking and since then completed all commissions alone, and that was why the judgment was that he had no teamwork. Dalkin was furious at the time, yelling that what he was hearing was ridiculous, then made it clear that he should be judged by his results, because he was stronger than most ranked adventurers. The guy emphasized to Dalkin that they could not change the evaluation standards, because as a recognizer, he could not promote him to 2 digits at the moment. Then Dalkin wanted to know about the boy who was in second place, and if he also was not a guy who acted alone. The evaluator explained that for certain rankings, the criteria could have exceptions and that he did not qualify. Dalkin thinks that if it depended on him now, he would eliminate the guy right then and there. He knew he was furious, even if he did not seem so, and that he tried his best for the ranking, since he knew ranking was everything, until the day he was introduced to 2 boys. The blonde kid at the time commented that he knew he was desperate, but that it was an honor to form a team with a guy who had 3 digits in the ranking. Dalkin knew he had no choice but to form a team with the small fries. He knew he lacked teamwork because he was just good, and that no matter who he joined with, it would only slow him down, and that the evaluators forgot this part. Until a huge eagle was about to attack his team, the blonde kid, completely scared, commented that he would never imagine that a griffin would appear there. However, Dalkin, without hesitation, delivered a powerful punch to the creature, and as soon as he defeated it, made it clear to his team that they needed to hurry to finish the mission. After night fell, everyone was lying next to a campfire, and Dalkin kept thinking that since he joined them, he found more giant magical beasts. Not that defeating them was difficult, until he noticed something and saw his partners going into the middle of the forest. So he decided to follow them, and was surprised by what he was seeing, because he was hearing them talking about the valuable materials and that they could split everything. Then the blonde kid commented that he would obtain information about giant magical beasts in advance and accidentally find them during the mission, and that the idiot who joined the team would take care of everything. The girl, with a sinister look, wants to know if the blonde kid thinks Dalkin really did not notice. He replies that he thinks he did not notice, and that he knows some rankers only care about raising their rankings, and that they can simply keep using him to the fullest. Dalkin cannot believe he is hearing this, and with a sinister look, wants to know if he should throw away the reward bag or eliminate them. They are completely terrified when they realize Dalkin is there, but the blonde kid quickly makes his move and lands a punch straight in his companion's face, then gets up and wants to know why Dalkin did that to her. He gets furious when he realizes the boy's intention. The blonde kid continues implying that they know they are weak, but that going as far as hitting a teammate is too much, then starts laughing like a maniac and makes it clear to Dalkin that this is why he cannot rise in the adventurer ranking. Then he grabs the girl by the arm and says he will report this to the bureau and that he thinks the boxer can say whatever he wants, but that compared to an uncooperative, his word is more reliable. However, he emphasizes that he is still generous and that it is only for Dalkin to apologize and forget about it, then turns and asks his friend if that is not right. She replies yes. Dalkin, very furious, thinks that he cannot lower himself to people like them and that they must think he will give in to this just to have the luxury of raising his ranking. So he laughs, and after eliminating the 2, He thinks that in no way will he submit to cheap blackmail. He also thinks that he has no regrets. But the Bureau found out about it, since eliminating a ranker is a serious crime, and thanks to his past achievements, he was spared from prison, but his ranking was revoked, and he was forbidden to register for 3 years. But that was when he had the chance to sell himself for money, and, while living recklessly and earning money, his registration period arrived, and a certain trafficker made him a strange offer. It was Rosso Cruel who made it clear to the boxer that if he wanted to know why not buy a ranking. Then he laughed a lot and thought that maybe he just wanted revenge, and that he wanted to destroy the rankings and also wanted to make those who had not recognized him regret it deeply. And as he thinks all this, while losing his consciousness, he thinks that the MC will someday feel this too. Being the pain of reaching the ceiling as a ranker, with no place to go, he thinks this and collapses to the ground. With that, the winner of the fight is Lo Tuli. The MC puts away his sword, and while he starts walking forward, Luke wants to know where he is going. He replies that it is not over yet, because he still needs to get Rosso Cruel. Hearing this leaves Luke very surprised, as she remembers when she told the MC that if he catches Cruel and interrogates him about unofficial rankings, he might be able to approach the mentor behind the worst ranking. Then, she runs and hugs her friend tightly and yells saying that he does not need to do this at the moment, then makes it clear that in the state Lo is in, now he would be defeated, and that is why she wants to wait for the next chance. The MC tries to say something, but Luke comments that it is okay, and emphasizes that just knowing someone who would say that is already enough for the moment. Lo looks at her, and while apologizing, ends up fainting. She runs to him worried and thinks that after the fight ended, Eddie woke up first and went to present himself to the recognition department, and Darkus, who woke up next, helped the MC with the treatment. He commented that he is also seriously injured, but can move with the help of his prana. As for the MC, while he slept, he thought that he had a long dream in which he was with his parents who were talking, and his mother wanted to know if it would really work, just singing close to her son, since he was only 1 year old. The MC's father replies that it was all right, because that was how the techniques worked, and emphasized that they were recorded not in the head, but in the heart. Then he made it clear that when Lova awakened to prana in the future, he would gradually remember, and that perhaps he would even remember this conversation. The MC's mother, very worried, replied that then he should not say anything strange. As for him, very small, he was just cuddled by his family, until his father called him and told him that his ancestors had special powers, and that because of that they gained wrath, and the ancestors defeated and scattered them, and one of them became the Tuli village they were in, and from that they lived in hiding. But in the end, he thinks it turned out well, and thanks to that they were able to spend their days away from fighting. Lovi, seeing his dream up close, thinks that he also feels the same, but something intrigued him, because if that is the case, he wants to know why they taught him the technique, and that his father, his mother, his grandmother, and all the others, he thinks they really knew that someday the time would come when they would have to fight, until he starts opening his eyes and sees Mr. Lud next to Luke. She gets excited seeing her friend wake up and soon starts crying with happiness and says that he did not wake up even after a day and that she began to get worried. Loa notices that he is treated and thanks her, but he wants to know why Mr. Lud is there. He says that he arrived quickly while the MC was sleeping and emphasizes that if he did not wake up, he would have to take him to the capital. Then, while helping Lo up, he says that he heard the story that he got involved in problematic events in the first mission, but wants to know if he can move. Lo replies yes, and looks back and sees the two talking. Darkus wants to know if Eddie went to the recognition department and has already returned. The archer replies that he was worried about leaving them there alone. Lova realizes that everyone is safe after all. Mr. Lod goes to Dalkin and wants to know if he can also move. Then he crouches and says that he will release the restrictions, but makes it clear that he should not resist, because it is a waste of time, so the boxer is taken away by the guards. Lod looks at his arms and keeps questioning what happened for him to end up that way, since he knows it was not cut, but simply disappeared, and knows he has never seen this kind of phenomenon before. So he concludes that it really seems that there is something capable of hitting the #1 knight in the ranking. After that, everyone starts leaving, and Luki says that after the MC's wounds heal, she thinks he should register for more rankings. Then she explains that rankings also lead to self-analysis. For example, Dalkin preferred close combat because he knew his strength was unmatched by anyone. Lo wants to know if Luke is saying that he should register for various rankings to learn about his strengths. She yells and replies that it is exactly that, and emphasizes that comparative evaluation is very important. Therefore, she emphasizes that the recognition department has facilities to measure various abilities and that she will guide him when they arrive at the capital. Meanwhile, in the middle of the forest, Rosso Cruel walks slowly, thinking about the prana fluctuation he felt a few moments ago, then concludes that it was as he thought about the MC, because for something that had been hidden for so long, he appeared quite naturally. But he questions if he is acting deliberately to draw attention to make contact with the island of the gods. After walking, he arrives at a place where there is a huge door with drawings of serpents, and as soon as the door opens, a guy says that they were waiting for him. As he goes further in, he stands before more people and calls them his comrades, and says that this time they finally discovered a descendant of Babel. Cruel sits in his chair and emphasizes that with this, they will be able to advance their plan greatly, because it is time to save the world they are in, which is controlled by things like rankings. Then, he asks his comrades to show their full power. All at once respond that they are under the name of Ouroboros. At that moment, Rosso Cruel starts pulling his own skin, but it was just a disguise, thus revealing the person behind everything, being the first in the smuggling ranking, second in assassination, fourth in robbery, fifth in drug manipulation, and the first in the criminal organization ranking, the leader of Ouroboros.